Hold up, I ain't trying to stump, man, but the Yeezys jumped over the jump, man. I be in and out of arenas like I'm Scottie Pippen.
Left my elbow in the pot, a la Vince Carter.
Bitch, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym?
James Harden with the range on me, nigga, way back.
Coach, they won't knock me off my pivot, forget it.
Been flowing stupid since Vince Carter was on some through the legs arm and a hoop shit.
And you can live through anything if magic made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, now you do.
Yes, sir. We are back. Round of applause for yourselves. This is your guy, Marcellus Ease, and we got some interesting stuff on the docket for today. Adam Silver going on a press run defending the league and the perception of the game after securing a $76 billion deal. What's going on with Adam? The league is definitely on the defense as the same sports media partners that are responsible for promoting the game is hurting it at the same time. And we'll touch base on Dwight Howard in a brand new series I'll be starting up called Protect Your Legacy, as Cam Newton committed the ultimate violation in the, I would say, player media movement, which is interviewing someone else's baby mother. This is crazy. Ultimate violation. But we'll touch base on some of the dynamics that are playing out in that whole fiasco. And speaking of fiascos, Big Baby Davis finally gives insight to what happened with that insurance scam involving the league. Killer Cameron from Dipset actually got the exclusive interview, so we'll break that down layer by layer as the former Boston Celtic champion prepares to do Fed time. And finally, we'll get some insight to what's going on with sports leagues and politics today. A lot of the energies from the early 2020s has been hampered down a little bit, but we'll get great insight from a current NBA media member on some of the dynamics that are playing out. So Adam Silver, after securing $76 billion with multiple partners on a new TV deal, Amazon, NBC, ESPN, him and the NBA seem to have won the current day battle, but they have not quite yet won the war. Because right now the media landscape is changing so fast. It's harder to get younger viewers' attention because they have a plethora of options that the younger NBA fan bases of before never had. So the league right now is still struggling to kind of grasp that generation's attention span. Meanwhile, entering into streaming, it's appealing to make the game more global. And in order for the NBA to do so, they have to make the game a bit easier for international stars to come in and actually cook. So the dynamic of the game has changed. The three-point shooting, the spacing. The NBA game itself today definitely is showing more skill than athleticism. But then again, it's not translating on television. So in this segment right here, we're going to break this down layer by layer as Adam Silver is going on a press run to kind of tamper down the noise of just the game being too repetitive, all the three-point shooting, also the ratings being down. And right now we have to understand there's a lot of independent media outside of the typical ones that the NBA is used to controlling, like ESPN. And a perfect example I can give of this exact scenario is when the NBA went down to Mexico City and the media in Mexico was asking Silver, when is he going to bring the team down here? And just understand, Silver does not like the optics of bringing a team down there and it just being a bunch of white guys being the owner. He's sort of making a pitch to the businessmen down there to bring some sort of infrastructure and some sort of partnership along with the league so they can make sure that transition happens smooth. And the optics are not good. So the importance of the owners of the team being Mexican bred, Mexican born, Mexican natives is important. And also the relationships have to be established, as well as the NBA establishing the relationships with the media so they can somewhat control the narratives. And this is how that ties into this situation. As the media landscape grows bigger and bigger, there's more independent outlets, there's more content creators. The noise around the low ratings is high, and the noise around the game being repetitive is insane. But before we hear from Silver and his multiple press runs, let's take a look at Andrew Sharp from Sharp Tech explain the NBA's conundrum of how they secure such a large deal, but yet it's kind of operating in a gray area. It's almost like They won the current day battle, but there's still a long war to fight.
So I think looking back, the real genius on the NBA's part, or the miracle, I should say, is that they were able to drum up some competition for these bids. And I think that's one of the things that has kept the NFL from being able to extract like trillions of dollars from companies, because the networks that air the NFL love paying for the NFL, but there aren't like people trying to beat down the door to buy NFL rights. It's just sort of the same group of networks. And the NBA managing to convince NBC and then carving out a little package that they were going to sell to some streaming platform, or Warner Brothers Discovery, who I guess has HBO Max, to circle back to the merger. That has allowed them to sort of create a bidding war, and I think get more money for the rights than makes any sense. But, you know, some of the legacy networks, this is really all they have to try to bilk out cable transmission fees for the next 10 years and then figure out what the future of the business looks like. The future of the business doesn't look particularly promising, but everybody's just trying to buy time at this point. And the NBA knew that they had those networks over a barrel, and they were able to capitalize, at least for now. I think it's going to be a much trickier situation when you get 10 years down the road and some of these networks are really going through it, and God only knows what the ratings will look like at that point.
And God only knows if they will have the real access to the data for the ratings. That's really the question that no one has asked yet. What are the stipulations of the TV deal? We hear about the money, the billions of dollars, but we all know it's really about the terms. Netflix and other streamers, they tend to like to hide their numbers on what they're really doing. But will the league have access to it? Especially Amazon. Will they have access to those numbers? Because we all know Amazon, they have an ability to sell products directly to the people that are watching. So is there a way for the NBA to actually gain that data and utilize it for themselves? They can actually learn what their audience likes to watch. Maybe an audience in a state like Pennsylvania, maybe they like to eat Doritos, versus an audience in Arizona, they like to eat Pop-Tarts. It's just an example, but they can get this type of detailed data from their new streaming partners. And Adam Silver making his press run seem real defensive. It's almost like he's defending the perception of the NBA. As he sat down with Colin Cowherd, we're going to start off here, and Silver is almost beat down to submission, actually admitting that sometimes the game does somewhat get too repetitive. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I'm going to throw this at you. I said this the other day about the aesthetic of the NBA. It's a bit homogenous, a little cookie cutter, and I said, listen, I don't mind three-pointers, but if the NFL was just, you could run the ball and throw bombs. No layering, no drag routes, no tight end screen. It was just run it or bombs. Optically, it's not as fascinating. And I love the three-pointer. But like, and you know this, you're a pretty progressive thinker, I think. Athletes are better. Wemby can pull up and cross you over on a dribble and shoot. They couldn't do that 10 years ago. And the truth is, because your players are so gifted and it's such a global pool, the three-pointer is too easy. And I have simply said, I would put the three-pointer, I would have it go into the bench about 6 feet up, eliminate the corner. I'd bring back the hand check. I do like physicality. Your athletes are so great, it's become too easy to hit it. And the optics on it are repetitive. I think there's numbers, ratings that prove people are, they like layers and power forwards and physicality and not just dunks and threes. What do you do to solve that? Because I think you've engaged with people and acknowledged it can be a bit repetitive. It is a bit of an issue. What do we do to change it?
The hardest question is the last one you asked. What do we do to change it? I agree to the extent that you start to see very similar offenses around the league. You know, teams have brands, teams have identity. You know, Joe Dumars is a colleague now at the league office, the Bad Boys, et cetera. You know, I think, you know, the Showtime Lakers. So I recognize that to the extent that offenses start to look very similar, we lose that. At the same time, the the league is going through a transformation. Just as you said, players like Victor Wembanyama, players like, Jokic are doing things big men never did historically. I mean, It wasn't that long ago, Colin. You'll remember that conversations you had with David Stern, we would bemoan the lack of skill among some players, that, there was a sense there was too much physicality around the game.
Yes.
That the play under the basket, that you would have, the hack-a-shack era. There were big men that just couldn't shoot free throws. There are no big men anymore who can't shoot. Right. Free throws, just as one comparable from generation to generation, have never been higher. So I think we just got to be careful. Like, the one thing I want to do is, I don't want to sort of knee-jerk move the three-point line. We're sort of going through a process now, seeing how these players are adapting to the new rules and figuring out if whatever changes we should make. I mean, to be honest, I wish it were as simple as just moving the three-point line back, because then we would just do it. I mean, part of the concern from the basketball folks is that if you move the three-point line back, you'll end up sort of just clogging up, the area under the basket. And that's not such attractive basketball either. I think this is doable. I think by examining the game and sort of seeing where it's going, I mean, it frustrates me a little as well, because it's obviously you're representative of what a fair number of people are saying about the game. And I watch it night in, night out. And we're seeing some of the most incredible athleticism and skill in the history of this league. Again, Victor Wembanyama. But I think you're also saying, too, that if we move the three-point line back, and what we ended up with was Victor Wembanyama standing under the basket the whole time and just waiting to dunk, that wouldn't be interesting either.
Right.
So one, I assure you, we are on it. I think it's a very fixable issue.
It is a fixable issue. But one thing that stands out is the acknowledgement that the analytics, quote unquote, the data, what the data says, Silver used to love to say that. A lot of that analytical bullshit, it does not translate well on television. This is pretty much the acknowledgement of this. And this is nothing new. People have been saying this since the James Harden, Houston Rocket years. Outside of that fan base, nobody liked the way they play basketball. That was not enjoyable to watch at all. It's just a bunch of dribbles through the legs. It's either going to be a layup for a foul or James Harden just shooting a three. That is just not good basketball. But also going back to when Silver always used to say, we're looking at the data. The data says this, the data says that. Here's Silver actually acknowledging that the data was wrong and that all the rest period, the load management, and the science, quote unquote, was wrong about the actual rest time. The more these NBA players rest, the more likely it was for them to get hurt, especially with this new scheduling that they have. A game, then a rest day, game, rest day, game, rest day, for long stretches of periods. It's resulting in teams not having the ability to practice on their day off because they have to travel, they have to watch film, there's not enough time. And players of the past used to have, kind of a grueling schedule, but they would have periods where they have 3 to 4 days off. And that allowed them to build up a calluses to last throughout the season. And also at the same time, actually having a full committed day off where there's no travel, no nothing. Because right now, the way the scheduling is, with a game day off, players' day off is pretty much their travel day, their day to watch film. They don't get a full rest day where they're not, pretty much where they get a day to themselves. And it offers very little time for hard practices in between these games.
All I can say is we've worked with our teams. We're working a lot on the science. I think, incidentally, you don't hear load management so much around the league anymore, because I think we've dispelled that notion that it's somehow through some analytics or a computer program that on November 12th, you can make a decision that a player should sit out on December 20th, which is what was going on in the league. And in fact, my understanding, at least of the data that's come in so far, it may even be the case that some of the early season injuries are caused by players not having enough load. Because even
Thank you.
Now, right there, look at Colin Cowherd's sentiment. Thank you. It's about time they admit this. Because for the older NBA fans, them seeing players have a crazy workload and barely any injuries happen, it's fairly obvious to them that today's players are having too much rest time. Because why are all these injuries happening when they have plenty of days off? Something is not adding up.
Yeah, again, it's kind of fascinating. Like when I got to the league a little over 30 years ago, a lot of players would take the month of August and like literally go fishing.
Yeah.
They would chill out and they would like eat a little bit more, gain a little bit of weight. They'd come into training camp, and that's when you got back into shape, and you'd lose those pounds and you'd play your way and train and practice back into game shape. Now, there's hardly a player in the league that isn't working out every single day. Guys even go to the finals. They take a day off. They're back on the floor. But often it's specialized one-on-one training. It's weight room work. Whatever it is, it's not 5-on-5 basketball. And a lot of it, in fairness, these players, and that's what frustrates me too, because they don't take a day off. They're some of the hardest working athletes out there. But then they have it in their head that they're more likely to get injured if they're playing 5-on-5
and
basketball.
They're not. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Right. So then they come back into training camp, and it's still not necessarily 5-on-5. There's the preseason.
Silver, come on, keep it 100, man. Keep it a buck. The preseason is shortened, and guys are barely practicing that hard like they used to during the preseason. There's barely two-a-days. The preseason is fairly short. If guys are coming off of injuries, they barely have enough time to ramp up, to get into game shape, to get into game speed, get their bodies used to playing at game speed. They're getting way too much rest time, and by the time they get up to game speed, they're actually in the game, then they get hurt.
Again, minutes are limited. Then boom, the regular season comes, and at least I can't say it's perfect. I know it's causation yet, but there's certainly correlation early in the season that you see those guys. And it's interesting. It used to be we would hear from teams that you're going to injure our players if they play for USA basketball, the U.S. national team, the Olympic team,
right,
or the national teams, from the countries they're from. In fact, it's the opposite. We have fewer injuries, and maybe not surprisingly, from the guys who participate in competition over the summer, because the load is maintained. They're not overdoing it. But they come back, and there's that the consistency of the load, throughout the offseason. So I think this is an area too where better data, AI is changing everything.
Yeah.
Where we're going to be in a position, I think, where we can convince the teams and convince the players that actually playing is in their interest. But unfortunately, we're never going to be able to completely solve that issue for that family that comes to that game and is disappointed.
Now, Silver, that's going to be a hell of a feat, because the younger generation of players, they come into the league expecting a load management day. Many vets like Damian Lillard spoke on this. Young guys are coming in expecting a day off after a certain amount of time. So this will be a cultural shift internally that the NBA will have to go through. And most importantly, we have to admit, it's about the money also. The streaming services paid all that money for the games. They do not want star players to be out, because entering streaming, these games are going to be a lot harder to find. And imagine if the narrative gets out there that star players are taking games off. People are not even going to check for these games. I mean, just think about it. When you log into your Amazon, your Peacock app, or even the brand new ESPN streaming app, they're going to have a bunch of icons on the menus showing different shows, movies, documentaries, clips. You have a lot to choose from. So in order to click on the game, you have to bypass all that. And the NBA product is going to have to be on point to maintain that attention span, because streaming is a different interaction with the audience from television. Long gone are the days of people flickering through a television channel, or even a television channel having the power to just show one programming for that hour block. Yeah, these brand new interactions are going to have to be taken into consideration. But continuing on his press run, Adam Silver has sat down with Shaquille O'Neal, someone that is part of that TNT show Inside the NBA, where they normally criticize the league. They don't show no hesitation on that. But Shaq had a few lines of questionings for Silver. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
You mentioned early rules changes, and I've always wanted to ask you this personally. How does that process work? Do you say, I want this done, or do people come to you, they complain, you have to go through a process? Does it take months, does it take days, or does it all come and stand with you?
Well, it actually, ultimately, rule changes require a vote of the board of governors, of the people who own the teams. But there's a process through our competition committee. The competition committee includes owners, league officials, I'm on it, players, union representatives, referees. So it's a big group that all comes together, with players to discuss these issues. The one thing I would say, it could go faster in certain instances, but I also am cognizant that we shouldn't overreact. I mean, a good example is the discussion around the three-point shooting right now, and I've heard, your commentary and others on it, and it's something we're looking at closely. But I think it is important that it's a deliberate process, that it run through committees, that there's a general managers committee, that everybody have an opportunity to be heard on it, and we're not sort of herky-jerky moving the line forward, back, et cetera. We made that mistake actually many years ago. People may recall we moved the line in, and I think it was only 2 or 3 years later we moved it back out again. And so again, there's a process. I'm certainly not against making changes. We made one change, Shaq, in response to the whole Hack-a-Shaq issue, as you'll remember. That was an area where we looked at it for several years before we made that change. And there's situations probably where we've waited too long. I think last year, I should say that clarification, in addition to rule changes, there's also what we'll call euphemistically calibrations at the league office. I think like last year there was an adjustment, there was a sense, and part of it was a response to the basketball community that they felt that we were allowing players to hunt for fouls, particularly like in certain offensive plays, or call it, we're not traditional basketball plays. And
jumping into the defender.
Specifically done looking for fouls. And I think we made an adjustment because, and that's an area where talk about people involved. Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, he's become an advisor post-Duke to the competition committee. And I remember him saying at one of the meetings, fans like defense too. And there was a perception out there, I don't think it was accurate, that the league was focused on getting scores higher. That wasn't necessarily the case. I think there was a period where, Shaq will remember, probably, in the early 2000s, I don't know, where there was a sense the game had become too physical. And we weren't allowing players to show off their incredible skills.
And that is fact. The game was way too physical. This is after Michael Jordan had retired. The game was way too physical. You had a bunch of guys trying to imitate Michael Jordan, but they were not as efficient. Michael Jordan, for most of his career, has been above 50%. These guys were shooting 40%, just a bunch of volume shooting, and games will be like 70-69, the final score. So it's not appealing at all. Plus, the NBA already had a drop in viewers because of Michael Jordan's retirement.
And so scores naturally then started to creep up. And I think then there was a perception out there that the league felt that scoring high scores in their own right were something that fans wanted. And that wasn't necessarily the case. We wanted more competitive games. We wanted players to be able to demonstrate their skills on the floor. But I think Coach K made a really valuable point that fans also like to see physical defense. They don't want to see guys get hurt out there. They don't want to see, also just like with offense, they don't want to see unnatural basketball plays. But they want guys to be able to be physical.
AKA Houston Rockets, James Harden's Houston Rockets. That's really what it is. And it was birthing a lot of babies underneath that, AKA Trae Young. He was on that same bullshit. It makes for nasty television. Outside of those initial fan bases, of course, the Rockets fan base don't mind, as well as the Atlanta Hawks. But outside of that, for most, it's unwatchable.
I'm not so concerned about the comparisons of Shaq to Bill Russell necessarily, that to the extent that it becomes a different game, that there's three-point shooting in one era, there's not in another. I think we have to remain contemporary. At the same time, I think we have to be true to the game of basketball. I mean, I think there are certain things, that you hear four-point shots, things like that, which strike me as gimmicky, honestly. That
Facts. Only the analytical crowd mentions that four-point shot. It's just for them to continue some more analytics and hopefully land one of these front office jobs. That's really what it's all about at the end of the day for some of these guys, but that's way too gimmicky. and it also destroys the history books at the same time.
Agreed. But on the other hand, I think potentially moving a 3-point line. I mean, if you go back, I think it was Red Auerbach thought, it was the end of basketball, and the 3-point shot was added, and it took several, years, if not, longer than a decade before teams really started, changing the game in a way to take advantage of the efficiency through 3-point shooting. Now, again, maybe it's gone too far. It's something we have to look at, like cutting off the corners on the 3-point line. I think you need to have a healthy debate. I think when we're in the room, I think there's a lot of respect there, all those different constituencies there. I think it's important that they all be heard from, but I think there's no problem. I don't have a problem with people being passionate about their positions. I mean, one of the things we try to do coming from the league office is to present the data. I mean, usually those meetings begin on say, all right, exactly what percentage of shots are coming from the paint? What's 3-point? What's mid-range? I mean, and speaking of the data, I think one thing that's lost in this discussion is I think a lot of people have this sense that sort of, Shaq, where you won your championships, where you made your living in the paint, that somehow there's a decrease in the number of shots coming from under the basket. That's not the case at all. I mean, what you've seen happen over the last 20 years is certainly it's a highly inefficient shot if you're in 2-point zone right near the 3-point line. So that, I think most coaches are saying to their players, go 2 feet back, do whatever you have to do.
Not necessarily the case today. If the floor is so spread out, so the 2-point shot more than likely is an easier shot if you have the right big. That right there is something that has to be more nuancedly discussed in today's NBA. With the floor so spread out, some of these 2-point shots, you see guys like Jalen Brunson utilize this. Same thing for Nikola Jokic, same thing for even Kevin Durant. A lot of teams being so overly focused on threes are allowing the mid-range assassins, or just the guys who could finish near the cup, just around the paint, around the elbows. Those guys are killing it right now.
That's an inefficient shot. But then there's sort of the classic mid-range jumper. And yes, a lot of those shots have moved to 3-point shots, but you're still seeing the same percentage of shots in the paint. So again, there's still diversity in the league. I think though, and just again, Shaq, some things that you've talked about on air, I completely agree with you to the extent, not just the 3-point shooting issue, but there's a certain homogeneity in the game that it looks that teams are copying each other's styles. I think that's less interesting for fans. And Adam, to your point about what's happened in other sports, and they've all had to respond that analytics seem to take over. And the analytics take you in a certain direction. And maybe it's more 3-point shooting, for example, but it makes it less interesting for the fans. And I think back in the day, Shaq, when I think of, the style that you guys played in Orlando and then in LA, or then, think of the Pistons and what their style was versus the Bulls, et cetera. I think there's a lot to be said to that, to teams having identities. And so.
Facts. That's something that's missing from the league today. Teams having different identities, fans tuning in to see how are these two different styles going to clash against each other. Silver needs to find a way to bring that back. I don't know if he needs to allow more hand checking, a little bit more defensive advantages, but they need to find a nice formula to bring that back. Maybe it just takes a new generation of players to come in one draft. Maybe you just have a draft full of guys that are just bigs, that are physical, or you just have a draft of guys that are 6'8 plus, that are defensive minded.
Those are all things that the competition committee is looking at. It's one of the reasons why it's basketball people, but you also have league representatives like myself, owners in the room, to talk about the impact on engagement of our fans. So it's not just a pure basketball discussion. It's also one about what do fans really want to see. So it's all of that has to be in the mix.
Commissioner, there's a lot of talk about viewership, whether it's up or down. I'd like to hear your point of view of that. And you think we'll ever get consistently the same views like we got on Christmas Day?
Well, first of all, we're about even with last year right now in terms of our ratings. We were down initially in the season. We were up against the World Series. Obviously, there was a national election going on, which was driving a lot of viewership towards politics.
Adam giving a little word salad right there, because the World Series is every single year. in October, November. So that right there is already a bad excuse. The election makes a lot of sense, especially with the polarizing Trump.
But now, after we had a huge Christmas day, as I said, we're up on ESPN and ABC. We're down a little bit on our other networks, but we're roughly even for the season, and that's roughly even with last season. And last season was our highest regular season viewership in 4 years. So we're doing fine from a viewership standpoint. I mean, I hear the narrative, and I think it's nothing new. You've been around the league for a long time, Shaq. It's a bit of a sport to pick on the league on occasion. I get it. We got to respond to the critics as well. But I think the fact is, part of the reason for the change in the new television deals is that one of the advantages of the NBA is that we have a very young audience, an audience that advertisers like, an audience that influencers like, but they're not watching as much traditional television that they historically did. I mean, it's interesting. You're younger than I am, Shaq. You're still I'm now in that official older demographic, in that something like 70% of primetime viewership is comprised of people 55 and older. You got a few years to go. Adam's got a longer time to go. But young people, they're watching an enormous amount of screen time, but not traditional television.
Right.
It's social media. Social media, broadly described, videos on social media. By almost any measure, there's never been more engagement in the NBA than there is at this moment. No time in our history. And I'm not just talking about globally. I mean, when you look at it as a global league, absolutely, it's not even close. But even domestically, but people are consuming our games in other forms. It doesn't mean that it isn't part of my job to find ways to get our fans or potential fans to watch more games live.
That right there especially applies for the younger demographics, and Ja Morant played a big part in that. That's why him and these gun incidents is such a big deal. He attracted a lot of that younger demographic, like ages 7, 8, 9, 10. They love Ja Morant, and he has an organic charisma with that age demographic. They're just attracted to what he brings to the game from a viewing perspective on television. He in a way took the slot that was slated for Zion Williamson to be doing that. It was very organic because it's not like anyone thought that Ja was going to pop out of the screen more than Zion, especially during that 2019 draft. But instead, all that social media craze and attention and just organic charisma, it sort of went to Ja Morant, unbeknownst to the league.
Part of what I think we can do better is not just tell the larger stories about players and their lives and off the floor and all that, but then the nitty gritty, what YouTube, streaming, all these different channels allow us to do. Your podcast, frankly, allow fans to better understand the game. I mean, just one example, just even Giannis has been making transformative changes to me in his game this season. He's reduced his number of three-point shots against that trend. He's playing more in the paint. He's talking about it. And he's even talking about how he's learning a new aspect of his game. Playing at the elbow, playing under the basket. And when you read a story like that, then when I'm watching Milwaukee play, I'm looking at something else. Like it creates deeper engagement. It's like, all right, so instead of sort of the type of commentary where, that side didn't want it tonight, or, right, that side not playing as, it's like really trying to understand, like, what's Doc Rivers doing with that team?
Now, that's the discussion Silver is going to have with ESPN. Why in the hell were they discussing a Laker hire for a team that's really a play-in team during the NBA Finals? That made no sense. You have the NBA Finals with two of the top players for a new generation, Jason Tatum and Luka, and they spent most of the halftime talking about a JJ Redick hire. Makes no sense. The Lakers are not going to have any impact on that championship going forward unless they make drastic changes, and that may even include trading LeBron James, but they're not going to do that. It's too much money being made.
Like, trying to understand, why has Cleveland had the success they've had so far this season? What makes Kenny such a great coach? It's like, what's really happening? And I think that if I'll be self-critical here about the job the league is doing. I think we have to do a better job and not just leave it to commentators, critics, fans to tell those great stories about.
100%. Do not leave it to ESPN. They're no longer in that business. That's another change that's happening. They've gone into the personality-based business. They're no longer into storytelling. Even Zach Lowe, that was the best NBA analyst ESPN had, and they just let go of him because they're more into the Stephen A. Smiths, the Shannon Sharps. They're in the personality business now, and they got to hit numbers. And so the slow buildup of storytelling and just the nuances of the game does not fit into their current business day model.
The game itself, why this game is so special, why I began by saying this transformative era in the league. It's like really trying to understand, like, what's Doc Rivers doing with that team? Like, trying to understand why has Cleveland had the success they've had so far this season? What makes Kenny such a great coach? It's like, what's really happening? And I think that I'll be self-critical here about the job the league is doing. I think we have to do a better job and not just leave it to commentators, critics, fans to tell those great stories about the game itself, why this game is so special, why I began by saying this transformative era in the league, what it is that you should be looking for as a fan, what's going to draw you in to understanding what makes these players so great, why a combination of certain players on the floor is working in a way that another combination of players isn't.
I think a lot of times where the old heads are not on point is because in this thing of ours, we have more great stories than we have bad stories. What I mean by that, when you think about this game, you can go back to the 60s and 70s. You can go Russell, you can go Magic, you can go Larry, Mike, Kobe, myself. And I was taught as a youngster that if people are going to pay to watch you perform, you put on a show. So I think a lot of times when we as old school players and old heads don't see these guys put on the show, and they're making a lot of money, and they're going to make it harder for you, I think, if they're not putting on a show, and we have to pay these prices and these streaming services. So I think we get on them so they know and understand. It's not that we're hating. It's like we want them to know and understand, like, bro, you're making $50 million, you deserve it, but that little kid that wants to see you play, don't be saying you're taking the night off when you're not really hurt. That little kid that wants to see you play, I know the three is open, but don't you think if you can just go baseline and dunk and just throw it down, it would just protect this thing of ours? So, a lot of people may think it's coming from hate, but for me, it's coming from love. I want you to put on a good show to protect this thing of ours. Guys like Charleston only made $2 or $3 million. I was lucky. I came in '92 and I always tell people, Commissioner, my dream was to make $8 million for 10 years. That was my whole dream.
And Shaq right here kind of reminds me of a good point to bring up in all this. The money's not guaranteed. That's what a lot of the younger players, guys like Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and just the newer generation don't really understand, because they've entered the league in a sweet spot where the money's just flowing in, and they have to understand they got to grind it out and make sure the game is appealing enough where the money continues to flow in for the next generation. And the way sometimes they kind of just go through the motion, just handle things, just taking games off, bragging about they're not going to dunk anymore. They're not really positioning the league in a way where the future generations are guaranteed to get that $100 million contract. Because entering into streaming, that is the case. These guys are really going to have to prove and show that the numbers reflect the health of the league, and thus they're going to have bigger deals, because there will be a lot lesser players bidding on the NBA going forward. This marriage to streaming signifies a lot of different things. Mainly network television channels are no longer going to be bidding on these NBA games or just having the NBA rights anymore. So the players that have the rights today are more than likely going to be the guys that are going to have the rights for the foreseeable future, unless some brand new technological shift happens.
And then I got lucky, and I don't know what you and Mr. Stern did, but it went boom, it went crazy. And then I got another hit at 100, and I was like, but my whole process was, okay, you're paying me all this money. I got to put on a show. So I just want people to, know and understand that it's not us. It's not us just hating. It's like, hey, we don't think you put on a show tonight. We think you need to put on a show to protect this thing of ours. Now, when I say this thing of ours, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Commissioner, because you've done a great job of getting these kids a lot of money, and I commend you for that.
And they got to understand, them getting a lot of money and it keeps going up and up and up is not really guaranteed. That is not a guarantee. And I think guys like Anthony Edwards, sometimes LaMelo Ball and others, they do not have this understanding yet.
This generation of players, I think it is important that they hear from those who came before them, the greats of the game, and not just sacrifices they made, but how they approach the game, that there is an entertainment side to this, that ultimately all of us, are here because of the fans. I'm fortunate to be in this position because of the fans, all the current NBA players, and this whole huge ecosystem built around the NBA that, believe it or not, accounts for something like 50,000 jobs when you start including the people who work day of game in the arena and everything else. It all comes down to those 450 players, but them understanding that this is about something bigger than themselves, and that, yes, at the end of the day, it's about the competition and it's about doing all they can to win, but there is an entertainment side to this. And part it's the realization that, and it goes to television ratings. One thing that's different from the old days, there's unlimited options right now. If you want to sit down and look at a screen, you could be playing a video game, you could be looking at YouTube, you can be looking at unlimited numbers of videos on social media. Yeah, and whatever. I think my cable system has 2,000 channels, and then you go to streaming.
Yeah, all that is competition for the NBA, and that's going to be a hell of a feat, especially for the upcoming generations that basically grew up on all these options
and multiple streaming services. So the competition is fierce, and I think, Adam, that goes back to your question about other leagues, or the NFL on holidays that we're on. It's like, I welcome the competition. I mean, we have to get better as well. I mean, and it's one thing, it's what I lose sleep over, that it's every day people are making an election to pay their money to go to an NBA game, or, literally every moment you're watching an NBA game, you're sitting there with the clicker deciding, is there something better else that's more engaging to watch? And part of the issue sometimes doesn't get enough focus. It's not just the number of people who watch the game, but how long they watch it. A rating is the average minute. So when people who used to watch a 2.5-hour game for, on average, an hour, watch for 50 minutes instead of an hour, that's a significant decline in your rating, even though it's the same number of people who are engaged in your game. Number one, we're listening to what people say. I mean, I don't want people to think for a second that, to the extent that, they're unhappy with, players that are resting or think there's too many three-point shooting. I mean, as you said before, the community is very focused on those issues. But at the same time, I think that the game has never been in a better place. I mean, I'm astounded on a nightly basis by what.
And he's right about that. The game hasn't been in a better place. The amount of talent that's coming in the league is unfucking believable. I mean, you could look at the teams like the Atlanta Hawks, how many guys that they got, especially in a rebuild. That's how a rebuild looks like today. The Orlando Magic, look at all the talent that they got on their team. Even the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got guys, multiple guys coming off the bench impacting the game. And the top end of that is the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's unreal that they have that many players coming off the bench just affecting the game, not only offensively as well as defensively. So there is definitely an influx of talent, but just as Silver has stated earlier, they are looking at the reactions of the fans in real time, especially through NBA Twitter. You kind of get a real-time reaction on what the fans are really engaging with, what they like versus what they don't like. So this is a good thing about social media. It gives the NBA kind of a way of testing the temperature in the room to see if their product actually engages with fans.
What I'm seeing on the floor. And if anything, I get a bit frustrated at times because I feel there's more that the league office should be able to do to translate what I'm watching in a way that people at home are understanding how incredibly entertaining and off the charts athletic and skilled these players are. And so I genuinely believe the best days are ahead of this league. I should mention too, I'm so proud of what's happening in the WNBA right now with women's basketball. Also, been at that for 28 years now at this, supporting women's basketball, and it's really turned a corner in the last couple of years. So I just think this game, I love this game of basketball. And I think to the extent that we can bring joy to more people's lives through this game, get more young boys and girls playing this game, being part of a team, understanding the values of this game that Bill Bradley has written about and others have talked about, I think it just could be so additive to people's lives.
And that WNBA shows you how a generation of players could change the whole perception of the league. Just some of those girls that have been coming in, just present day and the ones that are coming in currently right now, those girls are already coming in with the ability to just market themselves. Like it's unreal what's going on with the WNBA. It's a really good look, and they are in a great place. So the game overall on the men's side and female side, it is pretty healthy. But again, the league is reacting to some of their feedback on social media in real time. And the noise from that feedback is getting louder and louder. As Adam Silver has sat down with Dan Patrick, and he was kind of on the defense so much that he just brought up an idea of them making a slight change towards the timing of the quarters. You guys check it out.
But what bothers you more, the ratings or the coverage of the ratings?
The ratings are fine. I mean, we're roughly even with last season for the regular season, which was the highest ratings for a regular season in 4 years.
I wonder if Silver's going to answer that second part, because some of that coverage of the ratings is not necessarily coming from their television partner, mainly ESPN, but it's coming from a lot of independent media.
I get it, there was a narrative early in the season, we were down a bit. You've been covering the league for a long time. I mean, it seems that there's always a narrative around our sport. Too physical, too much isolation, scoring too low, super teams, player empowerment. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And then the narrative early in the season became the ratings are down because of three-point shooting. I think those are two independent issues. The ratings are now about even with last year. And as I said, if you look more broadly at other measures of engagement, our attendance last season was the highest in the history of the league. I mean, you can't look at social media over too long a spectrum because it didn't exist. But when you add in social media, the game has never been more popular in terms of the engagement. So do I get frustrated around the narrative around ratings? Yeah, especially when, because of the decline in traditional television, the decline in cable homes, everyone's down a bit. So, plus we entered into our new deals for the next decade. So I feel good about that. But I think those narratives become a reality to the extent, especially even when we're doing well, it's still only a relatively small percentage of the population that's watching live games. So there's a lot of people out there who may not be fans of the NBA and become consumed with that story. And again, NBA seems to take a disproportionate amount of that discussion. I think maybe because we're so relevant from a societal standpoint, our players have been outspoken. There's been a history of activism in certain cases in this league. For whatever those reasons, I think at the end of the day, my job is to find more people who are inclined to want to watch live sports, to want to watch basketball, and convert them into NBA fans.
Give me this has been discussed.
I mean, one that's only been discussed a little, I wouldn't put it necessarily in the category of being so wild, is potentially 2 free throws for a foul and a three-point shot. I don't necessarily think I would do it in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Now that's interesting that came up, because the league actually made it 3 free throws on that shot because of the 1994 NBA Finals between the Knicks and the Rockets. The Knicks got fouled on a 3-point attempt, but at the time the rule book only allowed them to shoot 2 free throws. But had they had the ability to make a third one, it would have changed that whole series. Perhaps they may have even won the championship. So the league actually changed the rules back then, but it seems like they're changing it back to the original way it was. Very strange that they're considering going back.
But I think that's something interesting. Something else that I'm a fan of and I'm probably in a minority, as we get more involved in global basketball, the NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. And I am a fan of 4 10-minute quarters. I'm not sure that many others are. I mean, putting aside what it means for records and things like that, I think that a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with sort of modern television habits. I don't think people in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but I think as a television program, being 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball is 2 hours. College basketball, of course, is
Yeah, but
is
if
40
you
minutes.
like it, I'd say it has kind of a little bit of a push there.
Yeah, but it's such a dramatic change to the game. I mean, I think something like that would have to be talked more about over time. I mean, incidentally,
But the pitch clock was dramatic, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'm a fan of what baseball did. I'm a baseball fan, and I think some of those changes have really increased sort of the engagement, the entertainment value of the game, and so I'm paying a lot of attention to that. And in fact, I've used the pitch clock, the sort of the increasing the size of the base, et cetera, in meetings at the NBA to say, if baseball, which is more locked into tradition, and I don't mean that negatively, than any other sport. And part of what baseball provides is the tradition, the legacy, that if they're able to make those changes, certainly we shouldn't be afraid to look at changes as well. So, I also think, though, we have made a series of changes over the years. They haven't been as dramatic in many cases. We've changed the format in the last 2 minutes of the game so we wouldn't have as many stoppages. We have a coach's challenge now. We had the hack-a-shack issue. We changed the rule there. I mean, there's this. We added the cup, which we now have. We have a play-in tournament. I mean, so
Those two things really benefit streaming. That's just extra inventory for streaming, for them to buy those separate packages. Also, who knows? Maybe they can host those events internationally. You never know. That Saudi money, it's eventually going to look enticing.
We've made significant changes.
But it is what it is. It looks like Silver is trying to find a perfect medium without having to take away from the 82 game scheduling. Maybe shorten up the time of the game between quarters. It sounds reasonable. At first it sounded crazy, but that may be their response to that 82 game scheduling. But then again, 82 games works perfect for streaming, especially, the fact that they're going to need inventory heading into that platform. Who knows? Netflix might be interested the next time around their television deal comes up. So there you have it. Silver weathered the storm pretty well. He has a crazy task ahead of him. He already secured a $76 billion deal. But at the same time, there is a war, a Cold War, I should say, that's still raging on. And he's going to have to put out a few of the fires. But he has done a great job getting these guys paid, but he has to make sure the ship could continue sailing into the future. So this will be a brand new series I'll be starting up called Protect Your Legacy, and this will be Volume 1 starring Dwight Howard. And man, we are in some interesting times right now with players in various sports trying to enter the current media landscape. And make no mistake about it, when Shannon Sharpe landed that explosive interview that went viral with Cat Williams, there's not only many athletes chasing that same viral moment, but there's also understanding that Shannon Sharpe kind of established himself in the media ecosystem as being one of those top guys. And he can cross over not only in the sports world, but as well as the entertainment world. And now we see his profile landed him on ESPN, as well as still having his show with ties to Fox Sports. So in this segment right here, we're going to see Cam Newton commit the ultimate act of violation, the ultimate act of treason among other athletes throughout the various leagues. And it really opens up Pandora's box, because we've never seen this before with someone interviewing someone's baby mother. And Cam Newton does live a very similar lifestyle to Dwight Howard. But that's why I say, Dwight Howard, protect your legacy, because him not making the All NBA 75 is a travesty in itself. Let's not forget, when we were supposed to get the LeBron versus Kobe NBA Finals, Dwight Howard out of nowhere put an end to that, easily eliminating LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But in this segment right here, Cam Newton opens up Pandora's box by sitting with Dwight Howard's baby mother, Royce Reed, 1 of 5. And a few things came into light. Not only a story about LeBron James, and his sort of sentiment after finding out Kobe Bryant had passed away. But Kim also fishes for that viral moment by asking certain questions about Dwight Howard's lifestyle. But to start this off, Kim asked Royce Reed, Dwight's baby mother, of why exactly she's doing this interview. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
People talk and they say, oh, Royce has been talking. And I'm like, not really. I didn't really, do an interview until the one with Carlos King because I couldn't. So I tried to dance it away. I tried to work it away, and I'm still being punched. So when I'm looking at these other women and I'm listening to their stories, and they're getting punched too, and it's not them that's the problem, it's the other person that's so much bigger, it's giving them just a space to speak. That's my goal.
Now, when you say you've been silenced, that's a very powerful word, but in what way and who?
I was literally silenced by a document, Dwight Howard. And what's crazy is he didn't realize by us having this new agreement that now allows me to speak because it null and voids the old one. But that's also why all the records are unsealed. Congratulations. So when I was doing the show, we are initially on it together. So when I went to pitch the show, which is why they sent me because I was actually still with an athlete, I pitched at all these stations, it got picked up, and then we broke up because it's in my series, but he cheated on me. And I went off, I was Twitter strong back then, like, oh, this motherfucker, right? And he got pissed off, and then he had all his attorneys write up all these things, and, well, we just want to make sure if she's still going to do the show that she's not going to talk trash about him. Okay, I don't want to do this to talk trash about you. We're not even together. I don't even want you on the show. Yeah. So I was fine with that. The next day, my attorney asked me to come down to his office. And I'm like, for what? He's like, I need you to sign this agreement. What agreement? Basically what we said yesterday. Okay. Right. I get down there. He's rushing me to sign it. And this is another reason why I keep everything. That's why I have all these phones. Read everything, even when someone is telling you to hurry up. Because I trusted this man. And he basically had me sign an injunction where it says I could not speak his name, show my child's photo, say my child's name, say his name, be around anyone that knew him. And if you even spoke about him, like we're doing right now, even if you were talking to one of them, I would have to get up and walk out. And it didn't say till death, it said till the end of time.
Perpetuity, that word. Well, I don't know if it said that.
No, end of time. End of time, yes.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Now, he did silence her, but the only thing she kind of left out is you came to an agreement because he provided some financial services. But then again, it's amazing how at the time, Royce Reed only had Twitter to go off on and kind of voice herself and her experiences. Fast forward into today's times, man, some of these guys, man, they mess with the wrong woman, man. It's over. There's so many outlets willing to pay her. It's almost like a career now. She can go from OnlyFans to being with the athlete to break up to just doing interviews and even having her own show. It's a full career now. That's why I named this segment Protect Your Legacy. And for Dwight Howard, he got to protect himself at all times. And for Cam Newton, he continues to fish into the personal lives as he begins to try to expose what's going on behind closed doors with Dwight. Like I said, man, Cam Newton, he is chasing that Shannon Sharpe profile. As right now, he has begun his journey on ESPN, but he wants that top spot. And going viral, no matter what the costs are, is the ultimate goal.
Yes, quarantine, when people ask, oh, why do you keep going back? It ain't no keep going back. It was 2009 and then 2020. Yes, I thought that he changed because of how he was acting after Mimi passed. All of us thought he changed. He put on this whole front and was like, it's about the kids, you know, God has come to me. Like, I mean, y'all, he put it on thick. And at first I had said no, but when Mimi passed and he started calling and I don't know what to do. That's not crying.
Who is Mimi?
Melissa, she was the 5th baby mother.
Okay.
Yes. But he's not crying and all this on the phone. And you start to feel bad. And like, well, damn, the world is really about to shut down. I have a whole boyfriend, but he done got me worried. But my boyfriend, he's like, well, I can't come there. He's like, if you really do feel like that, I'm against it. But if you feel like you just really need to go somewhere, then go.
Damn.
So I went. He told me to leave the second day after he told me that, after I told him about the story he told us about LeBron. He was like, you need to leave now. Why? He's like, because he's going to try and manipulate him, or manipulate all of y'all. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, for him to tell you a story like that, he's like, Royce, why? Why did you need to know that?
Now, right here, we're about to see a little revealing to some of the insights of what was going on as LeBron James's name gets tossed into this. And we're going to get direct insight from Dwight's perspective of what went on when Kobe Bryant had first passed and some of the players' reaction when the team was on their flight back home.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not following. It was a subtle LeBron thrown in there. Then,
he said that LeBron was not really crying or sad about Kobe passing. He said on the plane he had no emotion, and he was just like chilling, like everybody on the plane is upset, and LeBron was just straight face. He's like, the only time he got emotion was when he walked off the plane, and I think he walked off last, and he got in a car and like was like this. There's a video. He was like, that's the only time he had emotion.
And there is a video. I always found it odd that ESPN just had LeBron coming off the plane hugging Rob Pelinka, I believe it was. But ESPN quickly showed that, just that one clip. And Dwight Howard saying this, you got to take it with a grain of salt because you never know. His son might have actually held LeBron to higher esteem than his own father as an NBA player. And sometimes guys can get jealous of that. So you never know if that dynamic was playing out. But also keep in mind, LeBron James, as the Laker captain, did not even make a speech during that memorial service that the Lakers held. Magic Johnson spoke, and all the longtime great Lakers also spoke, like Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan made an appearance. All of Kobe Bryant's colleagues and personal idols were able to make speeches, and LeBron had to sit on the side on that. So that's just something just to keep in mind. But as Kim continues to fish, he asked Royce Reed how was it like when she first met Dwight.
And, you know, I'm like, he's like green just like I am, but, you know, this is something he wants to try. And I'm like, maybe this is how you explore sex. And so it was, I didn't like it. But, you know, he would like my finger. I've never liked that.
I mean, we already here. Fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
Is he gay?
Yo, Cam said, fuck it. Cam, ask her what you brought her here for, man. Come on. And this is why I say guys are fishing for that viral moment. Cam wants that Shannon Sharp profile because had he done his research, he wouldn't even have to ask this question. Dwight got involved in a quote unquote accusation of sexual harassment or just, you know, sexual abuse with a person that was a member of the LGBT community. And it's documented in court when they asked him, did he commit any sexual violation on this person? He said the act was consensual. So what does that mean? Think about it, Cam. He already answered the question on his sexuality. If he was a straight man, he would have been like, there was nothing that went down. But the fact that he said it was consensual, hey, there's your answer.
I think he's curious.
Have you ever witnessed him in some gay shit? Curious is one thing, but you ever witnessed him on some gay shit?
I have never witnessed him doing it, but
No. Because that's a strong, out of all this shit that we talking about, because you can't say that without.
Well, because I don't want to say, okay, you ever been in a house where you're like, how did we all get here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it is such a variety of people. And like you would never probably even speak in like just the regular world.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that. And this was at party night. And let's even back up a little bit. Christine had left because she found out that Dwight and I had started messing around. She had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to pull us into the room to have a meeting. And he said, y'all want to pull out y'all toys? And she was like, what? You know? And I was like, what the fuck? Because that was his introduction into trying to have one of them. No. Well, I guess, yeah, but I was saying the polyamorous thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
That's still a threesome.
I know, but I.
Okay.
Well, yeah, if he's asking about toys. But anyway, she ended up leaving, like, I think the next day, because she, like, lost it.
Mm-hmm.
I was laughing. I thought the shit was funny, because I was like, why would you even try me like that? Mm-mm.
So, back on track. The parties.
Yeah.
All right. Have you ever witnessed him being with another man in the bedroom?
Yeah. All the time. They took mushrooms together. Mm-hmm. And then they were like in the bed moaning and like touching themselves. Yeah, but they said that's an effect of taking mushrooms. I didn't take them. I pretended to, but I didn't take them. I spit it right out.
What kind of fucking response is that? Oh, man. Dwight. You got to protect yourself at all time, fellas. This is crazy. Oh, man. Cam just violated and opened Pandora's box with this type of interview.
Because why would I take mushrooms with y'all? I don't even know you like that.
This is still the same party or a
No,
party?
I'm sorry, I'm like jumping around, but this is actually, I want to say the first, second, third day we were there.
This was still quarantine.
Yeah, but it was like way in the beginning when they tried to get all of us to take mushrooms. It's like way in the beginning. But then I think it was like the second day.
Okay,
Yeah.
Now this is another question that sparks concern. Where the fuck are the children?
And that is facts. Yo, their whole household is chaotic. No offense, even this broad right here. She and Dwight, they're all chaotic, man. But Dwight, you got to protect your legacy because it's not looking good. It's bad enough you got into a beef with Kobe after everyone knew he was all about winning. And then the league had left you out the NBA 75. And they in a way kind of forgot that you killed LeBron in 09 to get to the finals. So there is sort of an erasing of what you brought to the game. But again, in this new media landscape with the players trying to insert themselves as prominent figures within that ecosystem, a lot of them chasing for that viral moment is going to throw others under the bus. And Cam Newton, I'm shocked that this actually came from him because he's lived the life. He has the stripper girlfriend, the stripper baby mother, numerous baby mothers, just like Dwight. And just interviewing one of them just to get the secrets out, just to go viral, man. Huge violation, but it wouldn't shock me if other athletes begin to chase this model. That's how crazy this landscape is. But hey, Dwight, man, you definitely got to protect yourself at all times. So Big Baby Davis did a sit down with Cameron from the It Is What It Is podcast. Some of you know him as Killer Cam from Dipset. And I got to say, Big Baby spilled the beans on what's going on with that fraud case that he had with the NBA and their retirement medical plan. And before we get to the sit down, just to give a backstory, Terrence Williams, the former lottery pick in 2009, I believe he was the 11th pick. He ran an insurance scam on the NBA's retirement medical plan, which is unreal, $4 million. So basically he had other players signing off saying that they got dental work and various other medical treatments from different clinics. And basically they signed off on forms that he would send them and then he would send that kickback to the league to get a reimbursement, and the players would cut him a certain percentage of depending on how much money they got back. So in total, it added up to $4 million. This scheme ran from 2017 to 2020. And in 2021, the NBA started to notice some of the reimbursement forms that were actually coming in. And this is how sloppy shit was. The header and footer and a lot of the misspellings on the paperwork, if something just didn't seem right. And they would see multiple sets of forms coming from one clinic with the same time and date, which kind of, gives them a red flag. So it looks like Terrence Williams wasn't keeping up with the paperwork, not realizing that, hey, he already sent a fake form with a certain time and date and a player's name who at the same time was actually overseas playing a basketball game in Taiwan. So it definitely ran a red flag on the NBA side, and they instantly notified the feds. Again, this was sloppy work. About 18 NBA players were caught up in this, from Sebastian Telfair, Tony Allen, aka one of the Kobe stoppers from back in the day with the Celtics, Darius Miles, and Big Baby Davis. But right here, Cameron sits down with Big Baby so he can give his side of the story. And keep in mind, we have to have some grace for NBA players, especially when they go through the retirement phase, because it's almost like them going through the athletic death. With the NBA lifestyle is going to come down, the fame is going to come down, the kind of accolades, the kind of overpraising when they leave the courts from family and friends and just people in the public. So they kind of go through it when they first retire. But Big Baby Davis gives us some insight on what was going on with them. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
So in November of last year, you was facing up to 20 years for allegedly defrauding the NBA healthcare program, and ended up getting 40 months and 3 years supervision, if I'm not mistaken. And that just took place, and you're supposed to go in later this year. I read a lot about this, like I told you before we started this segment, but I didn't want to read. I wanted you to tell me exactly what happened, so therefore we don't have to hear it from anybody else.
So, to explain the situation,
and not to cut you off, remember when talking about this, you're gonna have a lot of people saying, "Oh, that's what happened," or "That's what didn't happen," because a lot of us, including myself, we always hear third party. So I want you to be very detailed, if possible, exactly from top to bottom what happened.
Yeah. So what it is the NBA Players Association and the NBA, right? They came together with a collecting and bargain agreement. And with the collecting and bargain agreement, the players and the owners put money in a pot. And that money in the pot goes to the health care for you after your career.
Right. Let me ask you this, because I don't know. Is this for the rest of your life, or is it a certain limit? Okay, so once you're in the NBA, and is it a certain amount of years you need to play to get the health care?
4 years.
Okay.
You're available to.
So if you play 4 years in the NBA, you'll have health care for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And you'll also have the best health care for the rest of your life. That plan is A1 from the NBA. That's one of the beauties of being part of that fraternity. They take care of you for the rest of your life, and that healthcare plan is A1. It is premium. So just to paint a perfect picture right here, just imagine the levels of desperation that these guys are gonna just commit a couple of $100,000 of schemes after retirement to eventually get kicked off that plan, knowing that they have medical issues from dealing with that grueling 82 game schedule plus travel.
Gotcha. I just want to understand.
But you got to put the money in. You have to put the money in, and the owners will match what you put in.
Okay. So, so basically, I'm just being transparent because I don't know. Let's say you, out your pocket, Glenn Davis's pocket, you have to put 90,000 in.
I have to put.
And the owners will put 90.
I think it was 16,000 at the time.
Okay. I was just using hypothetical.
And so the owners matched it.
Okay.
And that goes to your health care.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, as players, when I retired, I didn't know. I wasn't in touch with the Players Association. It wasn't like they sent me a brochure like, hey, this is what you have, and then my financial advisor didn't know nothing about it, and so when That
right there is a red flag. You sure already know his financial advisor, more than likely it could be, you know, a family friend or just a longtime friend from around the way, because that healthcare plan is one of the premiums of working in the NBA. That's why players not only try to hit that retirement, the 10 years to get that pension, but also the 4 years to get that healthcare plan for the rest of their lives.
I was working out in Vegas, and one of the players, Alan Anderson, came up to me and asked me, he said, "Hey, are you paying cash for, you know, your injuries and everything you've been through?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so he was like, "Hey, you have, you know, health insurance, you know?" I was like, "Okay." He's like, "How do I get, you know, attached to it? How do I figure it out?" And after conversating with him, he taught me how to get into my account and see how much money I had. And so I looked and I had a lot of money. And, you know, it was shocking to me because of, in 2015, my last year with the Clippers, I broke my ankle. But the thing was, the Clippers misdiagnosed me. And they were just saying that it was, hey, me being overweight, and you broke, you know, and your foot sore, because before I came to the Clippers, I had a fifth metatarsal break. That when I broke it.
What is that exactly?
A fifth metatarsal break is the pinky bone, right? It's like the pinky bone, right, in your foot.
Okay.
And so I snapped that bone, and with that being such a little bone and me being so big, it was kind of hard for me to heal. So I had to get another surgery, right? And so I had to go back in and take a graft piece of my hip and a screw about this big, right, to put in my foot, and then put the bone marrow over it, and then let it heal.
Wow.
Because the original, I don't know why the doctor didn't do it before, but they said it's just procedure that they have to let it do it first by its own and see if it heals.
Right.
But it didn't. So I had to go back in, get the screw, get the bone graft, and then that was my second surgery on my foot. But then I was with the Orlando Magic at the time. So the process was easier, right? I was in-house. I had somebody watching me every day. I had somebody making sure I was eating the right things, doing the right stuff. And so the process of healing was better. But the Clippers assumed that it was that injury. And so they didn't tell me it was broken. When I left the Clippers facility for my last exit meeting, you know, it wasn't an MRI. It wasn't anything to, hey, let's check on your foot to see if it's okay.
Let me ask you this before you go on. When you say the Clippers didn't tell you it was broken, were you telling them, hey, my foot is hurting, something's not right?
Yeah.
And you were going to get tests or something like that, to where they should have told you your foot was broken?
Yeah, so when I broke my foot, it was, I think, Game 4, Game 5 against the Spurs.
Okay.
And
this is the Clippers versus
This is the Clippers against the Spurs.
Okay.
And it was a difficult year because Doc was the president, and he just paid Spencer Hawes $22 million, and he wasn't fulfilling his duty during the year. Right. And so when the playoff came, he came to me, somebody that he knew, that he can trust, you know? And so I jumped all on that because I've never sought so much with him. Like, I didn't play a lot. Like, I played 10, 15 minutes here. Right. You know, Blake and DeAndre were the horses, and then he paid Spencer to kind of, you know, he paid Spencer a range shooting 4, but, you know, couldn't really defend. So, you know, he would rather live with me than, you know, live with Spence. So I started to play in the playoffs.
Okay.
And Game 5, I broke my ankle.
Okay.
I was trying to deflect the ball from Thiago Splinter, and then, like, I tried to pivot to go back the other way, and my ankle just pow. Right. And so, as you can see, I had to get wheelchaired off.
Right. I remember that.
And I didn't get any real x-rays, right, or MRIs or anything like that. It was just like, oh, your foot's, you know, you're overweight, your foot's just not healthy.
So just so we're clear on where you're at right now, you know something happened during the game. You get wheelchaired off. No x-ray, no MRI.
At the end of the season, no x-ray, no MRI.
Yeah, it's during the playoffs. It's the end of the season. More than likely, they're not going to re-sign him. Doc probably wasn't happy the way he was performing. But again, keep in mind, this is when Doc Rivers was stressed out because he was the president. I believe he hired his son, Austin Rivers, not too long in that small Clippers era. But he was under a lot of pressure. So Big Baby Dave is giving a nice little backstory right here.
You're just assuming that
it's just sore what they're telling me, and so I'm going back to Baton Rouge to rehab.
Okay.
As I go back to Baton Rouge to rehab, I'm feeling it's not feeling right. Something's wrong, and so I get another check, and they did an MRI and an X-ray, and it was like, yo, your foot's broken, and so at that time it was September, and when September hit, as you know, like a basketball season, it's ready to start, and so my foot's broke. I can't go and try out for anybody, and so now I get into this big depression, and that's.
Now, Big Baby Davis, I gotta ask you a question right here. What was going on in those other off-season months? Wouldn't you normally have to be working out and already kind of be in shape to work your way into a contract in September? So how do you find out then that your foot is broken? Shouldn't you have already gotten the MRI? We're just getting a nice little backstory on Big Baby Davis's mindset, because sometimes he relies, or he's just a little nonchalant, but he does overly rely on other people to kind of direct his life and steer things a certain way.
When, I didn't have the help. I broke my foot on their time, but I couldn't go to their facilities. I had to go to somebody else's facilities where there's thousands of other people there working out, and never really having the one-on-one as like the NBA gives you. If I broke my foot playing in the playoffs, I should be able to still have that access no matter if I was a free agent or not. I was working. So, I didn't have that, and that was tough because at the same time I was dealing with a divorce. And I was also dealing with my agent's brother got murdered by his spouse.
Now, that's a lot to unpack right there. Once again, Big Baby Davis at this point was already 4 years into the league. So he is already a part of that health insurance plan. So he could have just went through a rehab and got reimbursed for it. But again, it goes to show you his agent, knowing that he's in that situation, he's fighting through an injury, it's the off season, he needs to be healthy before the season starts to possibly get a contract, and they have no idea of the health insurance coverage that they can just go to a place and do rehab and get reimbursed for the fees. That's kind of crazy.
And it killed him, and it killed me also too.
Let's not rush past that.
Mm-hmm.
Your agent's brother got killed by his spouse.
Yeah, by his brother's girlfriend. They had a kid together. She shot him in the head.
How did that affect you or what you had going on? If it's your agent's brother?
Yeah, because my agent, John Hamilton, his brother was Daryl Hamilton, baseball player. Okay. Played for the Mets, played for the Rockies, was an MLB analyst. John Hamilton was a father figure to me.
Gotcha.
When I was 14 and he's seen that I had promise, he's always been there. Paying my cell phone bill, making sure that I eat, making sure that, I have food, or being able to go on a class trip. Like, he was always there for me.
Right.
Now, right there, it goes to show you the agent was the homie. He was the, I would say, the mentor. He definitely was that for Big Baby Davis going through his life, and he hooked him up. He made him his agent, knowing that he's going to collect a certain percentage of his contract, and it is what it is. But there's a lack of knowledge there from his agent, because what they don't really know is what could really help Big Baby Davis land another contract.
And so now when he comes to a point when his brother dies, like, you don't expect that. Now he got to raise his brother's son, and so that hit me also too, because I didn't have his attention, especially.
That's what I was going to ask you, because maybe the attention you may have been getting from him, it got diverted because he had a family tragedy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going through a real tough time at trying to figure out my career and like, is this it? And, that happened, and then, I got the drug charge. That was the drug charge after that,
Yeah, just going through that divorce, catching charges, having too much free time. It sounds like a typical NBA player or just any mega athlete from any sports league just coming off that high of just living off that NBA life with the girls, the attention, the big checks coming in every week, every month, etc., etc. But again, right here, we're getting a nice backstory on the mindset of Big Baby Davis, some of his personality traits, his over-reliance on certain institutions like his agent, the NBA organizations, not getting a second opinion on his leg, knowing that he's a free agent, waiting all the way to September to find out his foot's broken. And right now, at this exact moment right here, he's going to acknowledge the fallout between him and Doc Rivers.
Do you feel betrayed by the Clippers organization and Doc Rivers?
In a way, I do. When you think about that year, you know, yeah, I'm not perfect, but Doc knows me. He knows my heart.
Right.
He's seen me play trillions of times and knows that, you know, I'll give anything, you know, to be able to play for my teammates and to be able to be on the floor. But that year, Houston, you know, he takes me out the game and, you know, it's heated. I say, Doc, what you brought me here, man? Like, I'm on the ball.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to play. He looks at me and says, go to the back. Just go to, like.
Go to the back. We about to blow another 3-1 lead. Yo, Doc Rivers, man. I should have did that with a raspy voice, but yeah, Doc Rivers was all over the place as a president. Not every coach can actually handle that, being the president and coach. We've seen a lot of great coaches actually fall while being in that role. But again, right here, Big Baby Davis is about to explain him and Doc Rivers actually having beef, which may be the first time a lot of us is hearing this. Shout out to Cameron from Dipset. Who would have thought he dropped this exclusive?
At first, I did want to move. I said, I'm not going nowhere.
Right.
I'm under my belt. I'm not going nowhere. You're not about to kick me off.
Right.
And then when he got the security to, like, come on, Glenn, in the middle of a game.
So what, sending you to the end of the bench and sending back to the locker room?
Sending me in the locker room during the game.
Okay, I'm sorry.
For coming off the court and saying, hey, Doc, what you brought me here for, man? I want a ball. I want to, come on, man, let me eat.
Right.
He knew that's how I was when I was a rookie. That's, you know.
It's your personality. And
yeah,
your
and
drive.
so, yeah, he kicked me off. So I knew, you know, it wasn't the same Doc. You know, I knew I've came to a situation where, you know, Doc, you know, has a different role and has more pressure on him. And now he is trying to save his own, you know?
Basically save his ass.
Save his own ass.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, you think about it, like, you know, the things that he was doing. You know what I mean? I think he was all doing it for himself. Like,
because he wasn't just the coach, he's the GM as well.
Yeah, he was the president at the time.
President, okay.
And you know, when you're the president, you can go sign your son.
And give him millions of dollars that he might not deserve.
So he was doing anything he wanted. He liked.
You notice the slight right there? When you're the president, you can go sign your son. Man. Doc Rivers catches a lot of flack for that, but the fact that Big Baby Davis is still bringing this shit up years later is crazy. But again, right here, we're about to see that, yeah, they really got beef.
Like Spencer Hawes because, you know, Doc like white guys. You know, he love them. You know, I know he like black guys too, but a white guy that can shoot and.
You saying he cool with black guys, but he love him some white guys.
Oh yeah, he love them white. Yeah.
A coon.
Yo, you hear Big Baby Davis? Yeah. Come on, Big Baby. That whole team. JJ Redick was the only white guy, man. There was a bunch of brothers on that team. Come on, let's not cap.
Who you calling him?
Low key.
A low key coon.
Low key.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uncle Tom.
Low key.
Tap dance nigga.
Ta-da.
That's what you saying.
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Woo, right there. Yo, we had no idea that these guys had smoke like this. This is that 08 Celtics championship team. Doc Rivers got smoke with Big Baby? Man, Garnett and Pierce got to fix that. That is not good at all.
Now, are you blaming him as well for not having the team doctors diagnose you with this broken foot? Because, you know, and I know we've been speaking, but we haven't spoke a lot about it, but you were telling me during the games that they might have shot you up. And
Yeah,
like,
so when I broke my foot, they didn't tell when I did that. They didn't tell me, "Hey, your foot's broken," right? And so I figured, hey, it's kind of sore. Let me shoot it up then if it's not broken, But it was broken, and I was shooting it up, and I didn't know it was broken.
Right.
So that alone is you're trying to
fucking
play.
it up more.
You're wrapping it up. You're still trying to run on it. You're playing in a hot. You're trying to I played on it, and I had like 7 and 6 and 15 minutes. I still, played good. But after the third shot against Houston, we were up 3-1, and Doc was, "Hey man, you're not coming. Like you're not doing this. You're not doing that." Armand Hill was kind of like assistant coach. He was the one that was kind of like his little minion, And he comes to me, he's like, "You're not in shape." I'm like, "Man, something wrong with my ankle." And then they bench me, and I couldn't really move anymore. And then we end up, it was 3-1, and we end up losing the series.
Wow.
So he's upset. You know what I mean? So, he's not focused on me, a free agent that he's like, I'm not bringing him back no more. You know what I mean? So it's just like he wasn't focused on that. So, am I disappointed a little bit? Yeah, I am, because I never left him at the altar.
Right. Gotcha.
Since a rookie, I was there. I was
and when he called you to get ready,
I was the only rookie there. I was a rookie on that team for 3 years because everybody else was getting cut, or not playing anymore. Me and Avery Bradley are the only ones that stayed because we had a light. We had some talent. So I do feel some way. I wish they could have gave me that option. Right? Hey, it's broke.
Right.
Don't play on it.
Gotcha.
Get surgery.
Right.
Get ready for next year.
Right.
But it didn't happen like that.
Once again, Big Baby relies too much on the institutions to actually guide his career in a perfect route. He's going to have to take more of an initiative. And that very same mindset is what kind of got him caught up in this scam, as we'll learn later on. And even entering into that offseason, he had ample time to figure out that his ankle was broken, but he waited until September, knowing that he was a free agent. He was looking for a contract. He was supposed to be already in playing shape, already training throughout the whole summer to be ready in September to enter training camp. Again, right here, we're unpacking his mindset. He's a little bit too over-reliant on institutions to guide his career in the right path. You would think with him being in the league around the same time as LeBron, he would take some of his blueprint off that tree and apply it to himself. Just take control of your own career, man.
That's wild. So what? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to.
So all that stuff is happening,
right?
Is
he suing you because of this?
Yeah, I got sued too. Okay. I get sued, and now my second time getting arrested. Now I'm on probation, and trying to figure things out, and at the same time trying to figure out my acting career, and I'm in the music industry with my artists and stuff like that, trying to get open doors like that. I was just super depressed, man.
Right.
I didn't end my career like I wanted to. And
did you know you were depressed, or
no?
You didn't know?
I had no idea.
Right.
Smoking weed all day and being who I was, everybody was accepting. Like,
right.
It's easy to lock, because you Big Baby, and so I never got a chance to truly like heal. It was more like on to the next person in my life, instead of like healing, So after I go through all that, as the assault case comes, trying to find space, and then I start the Big Three. And as I start the Big Three, I get more.
And when we talk about the Big Three, just for the audience, Ice Cube's league.
Yeah, Ice Cube's league.
The big league. So you end up playing in the Big Three.
Yeah. So I start getting ready.
Okay.
So I started to go to physical therapy, working out, trying to get right. And at the time I was at Impact Sports.
Okay.
And so that was a pivotal point because I'm finding myself again. Oh, Big Baby, So. But basketball, so it kind of gave me some, a little love, and that's when I run into this big case.
Gotcha.
That's what happens when I get to the Big Three. That's what all this, this crazy stuff with the NBA healthcare starts coming.
It goes to show you Ice Cube's Big 3 league does have a space in the basketball ecosystem, because a lot of these guys, man, coming down from that NBA life just in the first few years off of retirement, they're going to need a nice little medium to kind of make that transition into regular civilian life, because it's definitely a culture shock for some of these guys to no longer be getting those six-figure checks that a lot of them been getting since the age of 18. Certain family members and fake friends are no longer around. Maybe the missus is looking at you kind of different because you're at home all day and the checks are not coming in. You guys can't live the same lifestyle you once did. And these guys have been doing basketball their whole lives. So they're trying to figure out how to transition because they still have so much more life to live. So it's almost like they have to find another brand new identity. Ice Cube, you might have something here with this Big 3. It is a perfect medium to help players during this transition.
How do we come to Glenn Davis is defrauding the NBA's health and welfare plan? How did we get there?
Well, I really feel like,
allegedly,
it first starts off with the injury.
Yep.
Having an injury and not knowing that you can, get compensated for all the stuff that you just went through. Right. That was my intention. When I ran into Alan and Terrence, and I didn't know, I didn't know what truly was going on, and that's why I involved my financial advisor.
Gotcha.
To check, to dot the I, check the I's, the T, whatever, to cross the T's, whatever a financial advisor is supposed to do, to make sure that everything was legit. Me going through my life, and going through all the divorce, all that crazy stuff, I should have checked up on it and looked at it more, you know what I mean, instead of okaying things. And that's what I did, my intentions, was never to defraud. When Terrence started asking me for money, Terrence Williams started asking me for money, I was like, what the hell? Like,
who is Terrence Williams?
Terrence Williams is a basketball player who's in this case who got 10 years.
Right.
Terrence Williams, I didn't know,
Once again, Terrence Williams is the ringleader of all this. He told the guys, hey, more than likely he approached Big Baby Davis about this. He showed him the cover letters of like the fake forms. He's like, hey, fill this out, say you got this done, and I'm gonna submit it to the league, and then I'm gonna get a reimbursement and I'll give you a percentage of the kickback.
So when he called me and started asking me for bread, I was like, nah, like, what the hell? Like, how the hell, you know what I mean? So that kind of threw me off. And then I stopped communicating with him. After that, after I did all that with him, because my financial advisor okayed it. Like, if I give my financial advisor his number and say, hey, call him, like, check on it, like, make sure everything's good.
Right, that's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, but again, we already established the financial advisor was the homie, was the mentor that he had when he was growing up. So it's not like Big Baby Davis actually went out of his way to find like a more veteran agent that kind of knew the ropes.
He signs the paperwork and he says, view it. He said, review it, sign it, send it back. He didn't, my financial advisor testified and said that on the phone, he told me that it was fishy, and he never told me that, right? Why would you tell me to review it, sign it, send it back in email, and sign everything in it with your handwriting?
Right.
Like, why would you do that if you said something was fishy?
Again, Big Baby Davis, an over-reliance on other people to guide his life in the right direction. That's always going to come back to bite him in the ass. And we've seen that from numerous NBA players, guys who are known of making a lot of money, guys like Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan. A lot of their fortunes have been stolen through financial advisors.
That just doesn't, when you do everything for me, my financial work, taxes, divorce, mom needs money, this account needs money, somebody needs money, he's signing, making sure that they get the money. Right. So I'm thinking it's okay, so, a part of me was evolve in it because my financial advisor gave me an okay.
Right.
You know, like I trust him.
Yeah, they got power of attorney.
Yeah, I trust him. Like, you know, I trust him with everything. So it's just like, you know, that was a crazy situation. And so now when he's asking for money, you know, when the everything went in, he's asking for money. I'm like, what the hell? So me and him really get into it. Where I stop answering the phone. I don't even, you know, I don't even communicate with him. But it being the NBA and him and Nate Robinson are good friends because they're from Seattle, Washington, I didn't want to create a beef. Right. I didn't want to create anything. Right. And at the same time, Terrence was struggling. Like Terrence was asking for money. Like, right. Hey man, I know I didn't get it done, man, but you know, can you give me $1,000, man? And
that's crazy. So you take advice from a dude that needed money, that was always a fringe player throughout the league, like a journeyman. Come on, Big Baby Davis. Come on, the story's something not adding up right here.
That's what I gave him.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, they made it painted like I was paying him to do this and do that, but like I gave my information to my advisor. Right. So I had felt like I was okay.
Right.
You know, until he started asking me for money. And then the plan manager vetoed the plan. So basically, when everybody puts their login for get the money, right, there's somebody watching it. Right. That person denied it. So I didn't get no money from Terrence William, Allen Anderson, and that whole situation with my financial advisor, me not paying attention, you know what I mean, and my financial advisor just signing like everything's okay, you know, when really it's not okay. You know what I mean? So, you know, when that situation happened, you know, with Terrence, like I bagged up, you know, and I don't get no money. And then now, you know, I'm at the big three working out and I'm remembering all that. And my friend has this doctor, a real doctor, a guy that I trust, and I get his phone number and, you know, ask him, hey, what can I do? Do I have to come to you? You know, my mom stays in Atlanta. He told me, no, you can count the days that you were with the big three and all the work you did there and the stuff that you did. And I was like, do you remember what I did? You know what I mean? He was like, yes. And so then he does the invoices and send me the invoices. So I'm like, okay, this is what I did, and okay, this is perfect. Like I remember this. And so, you know, I file. He tells me, you know, when the money comes, he's gonna.
Real quick.
Yeah.
You see, for other players, Terrence Williams was so sloppy that other guys were playing overseas, and he still filed paperwork saying that they had doctor's appointment at the same time in the U.S., which makes no sense. But for Big Baby Davis, he probably scouted him out, noticing that he's playing in the big three, and it's a perfect opportunity to just say, hey, he needs to be reimbursed because he played in these games and he has certain aches and pains, and this is for the treatment that he received. So he saw it as a perfect opportunity to submit extra paperwork for fraud, just for the Big Baby Davis part. But he did this with 18 other NBA players.
When you're saying what you did and he sends you the invoices, could you be more specific?
So basically, you have to kind of sign paperwork, right? And with the paperwork, at this time, it wasn't like, it was just filling in information, and then you have to show the invoices of all the things that you did.
Okay.
You know, and so...
when you say...
The paperwork he filled out with the NBA was fine, but then when he provided the invoice receipts so he can show how much money he spent to let the NBA know what they need to reimburse, when they looked at those receipts, those invoices, it was just sloppy all around. The header, things were misspelled. Terrence Williams is not Terrence Williams in a way should have just hired like a secretary to help him with this scheme, because he did it completely sloppy, and that's how they got caught.
Like, what do you mean exactly?
So basically, like, if you got stem and ice, if you got this type of surgery, you got to put it on
medical.
there. Medical.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, you know, he sent that over. Okay, and I thought it was okay. Right. You know what I mean? He told me, hey, you know, what account? I had 3 different accounts, and he asked me. He said, can I, you know, what account you want me to send this to? And I was like, hey, send it to any one of my accounts. And I gave him the accounts to send it to. And so, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I didn't think I was defrauding, you know what I mean? Because this guy's at the big three, he's watching, he's seeing us all work, we're all working.
So everything that you're telling me, just so I'm clear, that in your brain, or realistically, you were doing a went through, you thinking that the invoice are being sent for the stuff that you really had went through.
Yeah.
And you're saying that the invoices wasn't matching what you went through?
No, the doctor said that the invoices wasn't matching what I went through.
Right, that's what I meant.
The doctor said that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm thinking that, hey, because when the evidence came in and the prosecutors tried to make their claim, they made their claim on the different types of lifts that I was in on those days.
Right.
But they didn't realize that those lifts were at the big 3 days that I told the doctor to put in. But the doctor made it seem like, oh, it was supposed to be in Atlanta when he was at the big 3 at those days. So.
Yeah, Big Baby Davis, it's your fault, man. You had the paperwork, the proper paperwork, but you relied on Terrence Williams submitting it to the league. When in reality, you should have just got the paperwork from the doctors from the big 3 and then have your financial advisor submit it into the NBA. See, that's where he runs into a wall, because the judge is going to ask, why do you involve Terrence Williams? You have an insurance plan through the NBA. So it should be you, your financial advisor, and the NBA. It shouldn't be you, Terrence Williams, and your financial advisors perhaps maybe overlooking it, quote unquote. You're saying that he looked at it, but that's a little iffy. But you involved a third party. Why is Terrence Williams involved in your insurance plan? It makes no sense.
I'm just here to tell my story.
Right.
And the situation is, you know, it sucks. You know what I mean? That the fact that you go through an injury, a real true injury, and that's where you're coming from, and, you know, people are misusing the system.
Right.
You know?
So, and I know there's still some more to talk about, but let's summarize where we're at right now. You're breaking your ankle, hurting your ankle, whatever procedure that was in Orlando you said you had.
Yeah, I had a fifth metatarsal, then I had an ankle break for the Clippers.
With the Clippers. The Clippers didn't handle this correctly, didn't let you know you had your ankle was broke. You go back home, find out your ankle's broke, so therefore in September you can't try out for a team because now your ankle's broken. Eventually you end up playing with in the big 3 Ice Cubes League, and this is where you're meeting this doctor telling you that, hey, you still have NBA healthcare that you can use, and you're like, yeah, I'm an NBA player, let me use it. So he's misguiding basically both parties because you didn't have the knowledge on how much you can use or not.
Yeah, and what was the whole process.
Right.
You know, I just knew what I just went through with Terrence and them, that he's not a real doctor. He shouldn't be in this motherfucking thing doing this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need to go to a real doctor.
Right.
You know, so, because it doesn't make any sense. If I just went over here and did something here, why the fuck would I go over here and do it again?
Same thing. Exactly.
And why the fuck would you go to Terrence Williams, period, and give him the paperwork? That's where you're always going to run into the wall with the judge.
It's stupid. It's stupid. And I know it was 18 other players, but do you feel like, because you're probably the biggest name on this case as far as basketball is concerned,
I am.
Do you feel like they're trying to make an example of you?
No question.
Out of the 18 players, and it's probably more than 18 other players, probably a plethora of players, but do you feel like you're being singled out just because it's you?
Yes. You know, you think about that whole process. Like, I went on Vlad TV before my case. They used that as evidence.
Wow. Big Baby, you should already know they're always watching Vlad and people self-snitch on themselves. But to add to some more context, let's take a look at how he pretty much laughed at the whole case when Vlad presented him the details. Let's look at his reaction and we can understand why the court actually kind of used it against him.
So when I say all this, what do you say?
Take that shit to motherfucking trial.
Shout
Take
out to
that
Young
shit
Thug.
to motherfucking trial. That's all it. That's
Okay.
all I got to say. Ain't no talking, ain't no cooperating. You know, this situation is the NBA didn't do their due diligence. And now, you know, you're just put in a situation where you're associated. And so now I got to go to trial because they think I did something that I know I didn't do. You know what I mean? That I know that I'm innocent. You know what I mean?
the whole situation, I never got any money. That's the thing.
No money. But you're part of this indictment.
I'm a part of this indictment.
So are you on bail right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you get charged. And what's the bail amount?
I don't think it was no bail. I didn't have to pay nothing.
Right. You're not exactly a danger to society or a flight risk or anything else like
I didn't have to
that.
pay nothing like that. But yeah, it was just now you're in a certain group, you know, and now they want to just tag us all in when it's not that. It's people taking, you know, advantage of the situation. So I'm going to trial because I didn't do anything.
Okay. Are they offering you plea deals?
They haven't talked to me. Well, I'm not talking to them. I'm not doing no.
Right, but you've lawyered up, I'm sure.
I'm lawyered up, and I'm going to trial. I'm fighting.
Okay, I'm sorry you have to go through that.
Oh, ain't nothing. I'm gonna get my money. The NBA ain't gonna owe me because it's some bullshit. Some really, really bullshit.
Now, once again, that right there was the exact interview that the courts had end up using against him, and you can hear the arrogance, not only with the NBA, him singing with the feds taking him to trial, that Young Thug track. Yo, Big Baby Davis, man, come on. This whole thing was sloppy, but arrogance is one hell of a thing, especially in a situation like that. Sometimes Davis is a little bit too gun-holed on the fact that he didn't make any money or take any money out of the whole ordeal. The thing is, you submitted the paperwork. That right there is part of the fraud. But again, that internet clout is one hell of a thing. But that was just a quick side note. Let's just hop right back into the interview.
I was just trying to get paid. Like, Vlad had some money for me, and I was just like, okay, let me go viral and, you know, I'm telling my truth, you know, because that was my truth. But they used that like I didn't like the law, or you know, that's the only thing I didn't like. I didn't like that part because, you know, with today's new world, a lot of stuff that you see is not what you think. Absolutely. Yeah, it's my personality, but like, it's not what it is to make it a judgment on this case.
Gotcha.
You know, they use that as evidence, and the judge felt some way about it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Not understanding, hey, it's a Gen Z era here. Mm-hmm. You know, you're a baby boomer, whatever that is, or like, it's different. In the context of the internet, especially when you're talking about, you know, going viral and clout, like, you gotta understand it. I don't think she understood it.
Right.
You can tell right there, Big Baby Davis is not used to going through the system like that. They are not in the business of understanding nuances. All they have is the evidence of you submitting fraudulent paperwork with your name signed off on it to Terrence Williams, and he submitted it to the NBA, probably with your personal insurance information to actually put in that claim. That right there is where they pretty much got him jammed up.
Well, it was something I read, and we could clear this up for the one thing that I did breeze by. They were saying that you sent an invoice for dental work, $27,000 or $20-something thousand dollars, and the dentist was supposed to be here in Beverly Hills in California, but you were in Vegas were going on a flight to Paris, so the dates didn't match up. What do you have to say to that? Is that true? Is that not true? Or did some more bullshit that the guy did? Like,
well, it was bullshit that the guy did.
Right.
But my financial advisor not understanding the difference between this, right? I got my teeth done.
Right.
So I know you see that money missing, but like, you know damn well I ain't getting no root canal. So that's another reason why you shouldn't even fucking sign it, because that's not me. You know that I got my teeth done, but you know that's not what I got done. So why would you sign it?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that was
that financial advisor making mistakes at the wrong time.
It sounds like his financial advisor is just a homie. Come on, Cam, let's keep it a buck. You know what it is.
You know what it is, because I was going through a transition as far as, you know, money here, money there, and the money wasn't like it was. So he was trying to leave, but at the same time, kind of like, you know, he was still helping, you know what I mean? So I didn't pay him as much and more, so he didn't feel like he had to work, you know what I mean? Until I got a new check to be able to, you know.
I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What else do you want people to know about this situation before we move on?
I want people to know that the fact that, Glenn Davis is a stand-up guy. You know, when you talk about, you know, everything as far as the community and just being charismatic and loving people, and, you know, what you guys see here is not me. Right. You know, I've come from a long way. You know, I can, you know, make excuses of, you know, mama on drugs, don't know your daddy, you in the hood. Like, I can make those type of excuses. But I won't, you know. I know I have gaps, you know, but I still work hard to get to where I am today. And I cannot let that go. Like, no matter what they feel or how they paint me, like, I worked hard to be here. And to be able, and to go to jail for health care when the NBA had negligence, don't sit well with me, you know? And so I'm here to tell my story, you know, because I haven't got a chance to, right? Everybody's been making their assumptions on every other thing, but they haven't heard from me.
Exactly.
And
now right there, it's hard to tell if he's referring to the negligence with the way the Clippers handled him, or just the NBA actually accepting paperwork from Terrence Williams originally with the other 18 members. Even though his paperwork personally got rejected, but they did accept others' paperwork. So at the end of the day, Davis is gonna have to take some responsibility here.
And I'm the one that gotta live with this. You know, when I go sit down and go to jail, I gotta go look at them walls and deal with this. And it's unfair. You know, I think it's unfair, you know. And then also I want to be a testimony for athletes and mental illness. And
here we go with that bullshit spiel, man. Come on, man. I hate this, and guys hiding behind this bullshit. Listen, how come the issues are never with the mental illness when there's no money involved? Anytime there's money being made, a check to be grabbed, it's like the mental illness trope is being used. But for anything else where there's no monetary benefit, all of a sudden, that's never a fucking excuse. It's amazing. But that's unfortunate right there, because a lot of athletes today, they kind of fall into that form of branding, even though some of them don't even suffer from them type of issues. It's almost as if the times of today are like, okay, I made a dumb mistake. I had mental issues. It's like, come on, brother. That's not what it was. Very unfortunate for those who do have real mental issues.
And bring in a new type of culture. And what I think that should be for us athletes is go to where they are, right? Don't sit and send messages and send brochures through the mail. With us, you have to be hands-on, because we don't like the show.
They are hands-on. Yo, Davis, they are hands-on. Every team has a representative. If you did the due diligence and hired a proper agent, they would have told you, hey, you could go through the medical as soon as that Clippers season ended. It wouldn't have taken you 2 months into the offseason to actually go see another doctor. Once again, he was completely unaware of the insurance plan even after he was a free agent with the Clippers, searching for a contract knowing that his foot is bothering him. That's how much his agent was uninformed.
Don't like to reflect and be vulnerable, you know, especially at times right now. But sometimes we need that, and we need people that understand, that's been there, and to be hands-on, to go knock on the door, because we sit under a rock and we just let things go by. I think the NBA has to do a better job at that, because why are all our NBA players either going broke or, you know, divorced or assault, something? Like, it has to stop.
It has to stop, but a lot of that is self-inflicted, including you. He just admitted earlier in this interview that he took out $1 million cash, went back to the crib, invited 2 girls over, and just jumped around in the money, and then gave the girls a $20K here, $10K here. And then he started gambling $100K at a time until he realized the casinos, when he loses that much, especially if he borrowed the money, he got to pay $200K. So a lot of this is self-inflicted.
It has to stop. You know what I mean? Like, so I want to stand in the gap for those. you know, because this is a situation that, you know, anybody could have went through this. You know, there's so many stories of athletes being mishandled, mistreated, misrepresented, you know, in so many ways that we got to stop this. And I just want people to know, like, who I am and where I'm from and my morals and what I stand on, you know?
That's what's up. That's what's up.
So it is what it is, man. Big Baby Davis telling his side of the story. Got to take a bit more accountability for this situation, because the feds, when they come to you, man, that case is more than likely already solved. They got all the evidence they need. And you actually submitting that paperwork to Terrence Williams instead of directly to the NBA is already a question mark. That right there is part of the fraud, not the actual acceptance of the money, which Big Baby Davis keeps alluding to, because in his mind, that right there means he would be guilty because he made the money. But according to the law, it does not work like that, man. Certain personal information that goes into that paperwork that only you would know in order to put in that claim directly to the NBA. So they know that you gave Terrence Williams that information, and that right there is the fraud along with those fake receipts. But it is what it is. Hopefully Tony Allen, Sebastian Telfair, Darius Miles, Shannon Brown, they could just either do their time and just move on from the situation, because it is an embarrassment. And at the same time, they're also robbing their fellow NBA brothers who are really going through a lot of injury issues post-retirement. And that's a really messed up way to honor that sacred fraternity that they're part of, being an NBA player. So during the last Great American Royal Rumble, or should I say the election cycle, the media around the NBA has been quite perplexed on why the sudden change and shift of attitudes when making statements around the election coverage. The absence of the virtual signaling and a lot of the political jargon was very noticeable. And keep in mind, I've always alluded to this in my past segments, that the league, as well as its players, have used the last polarizing political landscape as a way of brand building. And a lot of the word salad doesn't really have much use unless you're willing to put boots on the ground. But prominent NBA media members Bomani Jones as well as Logan Murdoch had a sit down where they discussed this current landscape, with the NBA currently moving away from a lot of this polarization that has left the political world and entered into the sports world, as well as the NBA audience consumption habits and patterns, especially after the pandemic. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I wanted to get you in here because we're recording this a few days before the inauguration, and I wanted to get you in here to talk about just the evolution of how players use their voice on social issues. And I guess we'll start there, right? Like, what has been the biggest difference you've seen from players, I'm using this in air quotes, by the way, using their voice from the first Trump administration to now as we're going into the second one? What are the differences and similarities and the pros and cons?
I mean, I think the difference is stark. I don't really be hearing it that much no more. Like, maybe I'm not hanging out in the right places anymore. That's entirely possible. Like, I try to be very careful about using absolutes and saying things like, ain't nobody talking about it no more. But at least not anywhere that I've seen. It hasn't been that loud from athletes, but the point that I've always made about this that I think gets lost is rarely, if ever, is the athlete moving out of step with the larger society.
And it's not just the athlete not moving step with the larger society, it's also the entities. We've seen ESPN tone down a lot of some of their political virtual signaling. They toned that down a lot, especially through the election. And that UFC event that they had at Madison Square Garden, where they saw a large portion of their UFC audience was for a certain side of the political spectrum. That was sort of the signaling that, hey, we might need to tone this down a lot because we might be out of tune with our own audience. But at the end of the day, they really shouldn't be taking sides. They're a business entity just like the NBA, and they got to really appeal to a large global audience. It's not just the US. Now with them going into streaming, shit is much more globalized.
I think the larger society has the same sustained energy for pushback against Trump that it had 8 years ago. but like in terms of what the players are going to do, I guess it's also fair to say, let's see what happens as an administration goes. Like, it's one thing when you're talking about this during an election, but as the administration went with Trump, the pressure stayed on Trump the last go round. This time, the administration is about to start. Now, I don't think that it's going to be pressure anything close to what it was from anybody the last time that we did this, but now is kind of when the clock starts. And if somebody's going to do something, like what would be a precipitating factor to make people jump up again, to see if people can come anywhere near like having the energy that they had before?
That's the interesting part that I always think about is the fatigue level, right? I don't think people realize, people see the slogans, the chants, and the marches, and a lot of things that go into this, but they don't see the energy that is exerted when you are talking about a movement, especially a movement the size of what happened in the summer of 2020, right? And these are athletes with day jobs and things like that, and
And also these guys, man, with some of these movements, I mean, your favorite athletes that tell you to go out there and vote, a lot of these guys don't even have current licenses, or just current valid IDs. Even though they're celebrity, they themselves have to walk into the DMV or any state-ran office and actually apply for their IDs in person, no matter how famous they are. I don't know if there's certain celebrity services, but a lot of these guys, man, their driver's licenses are hard to maintain, because if you're LeBron, you can't just walk into the DMV. You got to sort of plan that out, hire security, and his assistants can't really help him out with that issue. And with their IDs more than likely expired, or it's just a hassle for them to go to the DMV, a lot of these guys really can't vote. I mean, a lot of them don't vote at the end of the day. Look at the NBA scheduling. You think they're going to stand in line at a local school and go vote?
I believe that people realize the sacrifice that is going, that really goes on when you're talking about a grassroots level movement. Do you think that these players just got up and were like, man, I dipped my toe in this in 2020, and even beyond that, right? Because you talk about the Colin Kaepernick, you talk about what happened in the NFL. But do you think there's a fatigue level of like, I went through this and I dipped my toe into this, and I just don't want to exert that energy anymore in the way that I did in 2020?
Well, I mean, that's certainly possible, but I think it probably comes more down to, I don't feel the way that I felt then, right? Like 2020, the question that I had always as 2020 went, and I think the answer has become clear, but the question was whether it was a movement or a moment. And it is very clear that it was a moment. It was not a movement. And there were things that were done, and there was some furniture that was moved around, but a whole lot of that shit right back where it was in the first place now, isn't it, right? Like, it was like the ability to keep that going wasn't there. But it was a moment that had to do with the social circumstances, but also a nation that was largely under the restrictions of a burgeoning pandemic. People who couldn't go places. Like, it was so tight and people were so mad that white people was on the team for like a good 6 to 8 weeks. Like, they was there, they stuck around. It was like a short-term lease, but they was in the neighborhood. Like, they was living there for a little bit.
Yo, Bomani Jones is hilarious, but it was all people. It's not just a particular skin color. All people hopped on the bandwagon. And as soon as things opened right back up, people had things to do. They went right back onto their lives. But the pandemic and some of the social movements presented a sort of branding opportunity. We've seen a lot of celebrities, or even just, I would say, public figures. They sort of got their name back out there by attaching themselves to certain movements. We've seen them even strike certain brand deals. So there was a monetary aspect to them attaching themselves to certain movements. But as we can see, fast forward to today, a lot of those energies were sort of fickle.
Time itself, I think, was so special, I mean special in the sense of unique, and then carried over into an election, and then we went from there. I don't think that things are landing with people the same way. I think a lot of the things that we talked about, keep it in mind that 2020, I would make the argument, was really kind of the culmination, not just of what the pushback was against Trump, but Trayvon Martin is killed in February of 2012. And Mike Brown, I believe that's August of 2014. Like the sustained energy of all of that stuff went, and it would make sense if after 8 years of that, people were just a little bit tired, right? Like it's not like the police stopped killing black people, but we did stop
Before or
talking
after.
about it in a national. Yeah, but we did stop talking about it after, in a national way. And I'm not judging people for the fact that they stopped talking about it. I'm just pointing out that sometimes you just lose the energy for things.
But also, I think that even on the other side of it, right? Like on 2020, it was interesting because you started seeing the commodification of protest in a lot of ways, right? Especially with leagues, you saw that, NBA was basically like, yo, we'll do whatever it takes for y'all to get back on this court and let's make this money real quick, right? We'll put it.
Facts. And it wasn't just the NBA, even SportsCenter. What happened with Jamel Hill and Michael Smith? ESPN was trying to capitalize off of all that. They tried to make SportsCenter quote unquote more woke, more hip. They could have just added that bop to it. Jamel Hill and Michael Smith were already doing that with their podcasts. They didn't have to go woke. They had a very brand new and unique way of covering sports. But ESPN trying to hop on that wave pushed them way too far to the left. And as soon as it started affecting the monetary side, they pulled back. Just like the NBA does the same thing. The branding is just different.
Anything you want on there. That's largely not there anymore. Talk about political pressure. You talk about things that have gone on in the administration. This administration right now, you see Trump right now where he is just going at the Amazons and these other places, and they're like, you know what, you were right, we're going to be on your side now. It's not the same political climate as it was. So like,
also to further elaborate on that point right there, a lot of these companies seen Trump go after big old Amazon. What do you think other large to mid-sized businesses are thinking? They don't want to be audited by the man that's now in power. So it shouldn't be shocking if long gone are the days of certain media outlets like ESPN being so anti-Trump.
I guess I'm thinking about, maybe months, years down the line, but like, what do you think is going to happen if, say, Trump goes out of league again, like he does in the NFL, or he specifically goes at the NBA, which is looked at as such this liberal league, even though they took away the slogans before the NFL did? Like, what's going to happen when there is a inevitable Trump? I'm going out of league. Or I'm going at these players. Do you think the leagues are going to have the players' backs in the way that they at least showed that they did outwardly back in 2016 and 2017?
Yeah, I do, because I don't know how much there is that Trump could really do to the leagues. Like what he could do to Amazon or Facebook or Meta, but companies of that scope and that operate in many ways somewhat monopolistically, there's a lot that a president can do to make their lives hard, right? It's a little bit different, I think, when you start talking about these leagues. So I do believe that they will have the players' backs if such a thing happens.
Make no mistake about it, leagues like the NBA do operate like a monopoly. So they can inquire about that. And also, they can still audit these leagues, send the IRS on their ass. There's only a few things big business is afraid of: paying taxes and regulation.
That hasn't been the culture war, though, that Trump has been fighting this go round. Like, I don't know if he comes back to this, if this is one of the hits that's going to go over the same way that it did before. Like, one thing people talk about very often they say about generals is that generals are always fighting the last war, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much the last war is going to prove itself to be reflective of what the direction is of this next war. I don't know that. I do agree with you, though, that there is a fair question to ask about how tall people going to stand in the face of what might happen with Trump. But I don't think that sports leagues are nearly as vulnerable as some of these other operations. Now, the question becomes the individual interest of the owners themselves, whether that makes them want to stay on board with Trump or how this goes. But I don't know. I think there's arguments on both sides of this, but I don't think that the leagues can afford to truly sell the players out.
I do wonder, though, right? Because specifically with the NBA, like if there is a Nick Bosa in the NBA somehow, right, who was very outspoken or with the current administration, even though we don't know what the political alignment of every single NBA player is, but I'm sure there's some that aligns with Trump and his policies. I mean, I'm sure there's more than one, and it might be growing based on, the exit polls of the last election. But
I wouldn't say it's growing because of the exit polls. It might have always been there. You could tell from the election results. It's fair to say that the country spoke. It's that things just got so politicized in sports that the players can't come out and outright support certain things. Same thing for the coaches, the front office personnels, as well as the owners. See, in the last few election cycles, the same back and forth, I'm on this side versus you being on that side, the way the media covers politics, it works in that ecosystem. It makes for good content for people who like to consume that. But that little back and forth kind of loyalty to a political side has spilled over into sports. And now you see guys backing certain players and teams no matter what they do. And sports was one of the few things that society had left where there was actual winners and losers, and it was undeniable. But now, because a lot of the political jargon has spilled over into the sports ecosystem, now we have a gray area where guys can make up excuses. We end up getting the analysts sort of like the Nick Wrights that create this whole gray area behind winning and losing. This shit is so nasty right now.
Does the NBA mitigate that distraction? Because it's on one thing, it is cool to put your support behind maybe a protest that everyone in your league is supporting. But what about if it's on the other side where they have to mitigate that, like someone is just straight MAGA? How do they mitigate that part?
You can't do anything about that. Like, that is a mainstream political opinion. You're not really. There are ways in which you could deconstruct the platform if somebody goes too far in one direction on a thing, and you can say that thing is the issue. But I mean, the majority of voters in America voted on that platform. It's very difficult to make the argument that you could go and tamp that down. Like, I don't know specifically how he feels about Trump, but I think somebody whose political platform kind of fits the description that you've offered is Jonathan Isaac. He over there being Jonathan Isaac. Don't nobody really care. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's no, I don't think there's, first of all, what a league can't do is ever appear that it is shutting down someone's politics. Like, you can shut somebody down for being indecent. You can shut somebody down for committing one of many isms. You can do, you have to kind of keep it on a level of principle in that way. But if it feels like that you're shutting down politics, you're in the wrong. You absolutely cannot win that.
He's absolutely right. And we've seen that play out with the China incident with Daryl Morey. See, the league right there, they had to tread very lightly because they cannot seem like they want to shut down Daryl Morey's voice, which he's talking about certain rights that Americans appreciate. And at the same time, they do not want to offend their Chinese quote unquote business partners. That's how the league can really just kind of one up the NFL, is because if they can grab that Chinese audience, which is billions and billions of people, that's just so much of a potential moneymaker right there.
Were you surprised at the lack of support or at lack of endorsement on either side from the NBA during this last presidential election? Like, LeBron did it, but I was kind of curious when he was going to throw. I mean, I knew his politics aligned with Kamala, but I was really surprised that it took him that long to endorse her. And I know Kamala she's not Obama in terms of just mass appeal, right? She just wasn't that. I mean, the numbers suggest that too. But were you surprised that a lot of players who seemed to have their politics aligned with her didn't really speak out, or at least a league that did?
We shouldn't be surprised. Guys like LeBron James with his major Nike connections, they have political insiders. They knew that it's more than likely that she wasn't going to win, and it wasn't worth the headache to endorse her. But more than likely, they had him endorse her when they thought they had a shot, when it was almost about 50-50. But at the end of the day, it wasn't worth to take the brand hit to endorse someone that you knew wasn't going to win. This election cycle was kind of odd because most people fairly got a good feel of who was going to win, especially after that shooting with Trump, that near assassination. That kind of just catapulted him, and that kind of American energy where it's like, the underdog, fight for your rights, all that kind of got activated, and you seen the shift, It's a very American thing to cheer for the underdog, especially for the guy that almost got assassinated. We love that comeback story. Even in sports, you could look at anyone that had a downfall. We love to see how they react. You could look at even from Michael Jordan, his father getting murdered, him leaving the NBA, then coming back. Mike Tyson losing all his money, going through a lot of struggles internally and mental issues. Like, we love to see the comeback. It's almost an American ritual.
By and large, kind of rally around her.
That's interesting. I'm not sure. I think it's the difficulty for me in coming up with the answer on that is how little I care about who any of these people are going to endorse in the direction of voting, right? And I hadn't really thought about it until you asked that question. Something I do find to be interesting is that, like, this was a pop culture phenomenon of an election also. Like, normally that is the sort of thing that encourages famous people, if they just want to be part of the conversation, to jump into it, right? And that didn't happen this go round. Like, I don't think that they were not as vocal as a league or anybody else, really. See, that's the thing. All of these things we're talking about specific to them, I don't think are that much different than. No, I can't say that about the Harris thing, though, because, I mean, people were definitely having something to say. Yeah, I guess I was surprised by that. Like, I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought in the moment, but I guess it is a little bit surprising, and I don't know who had truly what to lose in that, at that point. I don't like the league itself, like the NBA, like Park Avenue. They kind of need to be separate from this. But what I did find interesting, or at least it felt like, because I know when I've said these things, I'll hear from the NBA and they'll tell me about the things they've actually done. But you heard a lot more, or it felt a lot louder around voter registration from the NBA in 2020 than it did in 2024.
That's very interesting because this time around, the NBA was in the middle of negotiations for their brand new TV deal. And also that key word of just telling people to vote, it meant something different in 2020, which was vote for Biden, versus make America great again meant go for Trump. In reality, those two slogans are great for America, but that's how polarizing things were, that those two things meant that you were taking a side, when in reality, those two things actually benefit the country as a whole.
Right, because like just the mere act of encouraging people to register and to vote serves every purpose that you're talking about without having it be explicitly partisan. And we had seen in 2020, we were using arenas as election sites and all of those things. You just didn't hear as much about that this time. Yeah. I don't know what did. I truly don't know.
Wow, that shows you the difference. I forgot about that. Woo! The league was going out their way to make sure people was able to vote, which also was kind of virtual signaling, hey, we're going for Biden. Any entity at that time was making those type of moves. That was the messaging. Go for Biden. We're going to open up polls. We're going to make it easier for people to vote. And then on the other side, when you say make America great again, put America first, that meant you're voting for one side. Again, things are very odd, but there is virtual signaling.
Of that platform stuck around, into 2024. I just know I didn't hear that much about it.
You were talking about just even the voting, and the first thing that comes to mind is LeBron, in that, he was the face of More Than a Vote. He's not the face of it, as I don't even think he's leading the charge anymore. I think they ceded that to NECA, but
of course he's not leading in charge anymore. LeBron James' main goal is to be a billionaire. He said it multiple times. Him and Nike had used that opportunity with a lot of the virtual signaling and just going on the Biden campaign. They used that as brand building. And also Nike had a vested interest in going for Biden because Trump wanted to bring the factories back to United States. And also he was willing to tax any companies manufacturing products overseas, especially in China.
He's kind of evolved in like where he dips his toe in social issues now, right? And I know there's a lot that has to do with the fact that he's a businessman and, and things like that. He's kind of always been this sort of capitalist, but like where do you see his role in all of this, going forward right now, right? Because he is now, him and Steph Curry, who has kind of used his voice, but they are kind of now the two voices, but they're getting older, right? Like, so like where?
Age has nothing to do with them. These athletes should not be a voice for these kinds of situations. These guys have grueling 82-game scheduling, and their primary focus is their profession. That's the problem. We're relying on guys who have probably no idea of how this whole political process works.
Where do they fit in all of this right now in terms of their voice?
Well, I mean, being older should be the point of giving them more gravity. Like, I mean, I personally don't care what a 25-year-old thinks about any of this stuff. That'd be silly. Now, maybe I would care about that if I was 18, but I would think that with some age, that the point of you having something to say, you may not be as cool as you used to be, but your reach is probably as big, if not bigger, than it ever had been, and your voice got a little more bass to it. Like, I would think that there would be the case. I don't, like, LeBron's always tried to be a businessman, so I don't think any of that is different at this point. Like, to me, that's not a change.
It's definitely a change. You can't be on the verge of being a billionaire and all of a sudden you're part of a grassroots movement. It doesn't make any sense. That's like saying MLK was on the verge of being a billionaire, but yeah, he's protesting for civil rights. Same thing for Gandhi or any other person that tried to have some sort of social movement in the country that they reside in. LeBron James, unfortunately, is not in that position to be that leader. But what he can do is provide some backing financially. We see Michael Jordan, as well as Oprah Winfrey, give Spike Lee millions of dollars in order to make that Malcolm X movie. And at the end of the film, they both were seen wearing the shirt and the hat. They financially supported him as he received no backing in Hollywood to produce that film. That's one example of a silent approach that LeBron could take, but he cannot be the face of that movement.
You know, with LeBron ending up there. But I don't know what their place is, because again, I don't care. Like, I'm not that interested in what either of them think about these things. So the role of the athlete, to me, is very dependent upon who the athlete is himself, right? Like, to me, it's not just a general idea. You got to be a particular person with a particular insight and a particular set of cares, or, you know, a particular set of concerns, I would say, to get here. And like, it is helpful for people, particularly on the left, who want athletes to have views, because they feel like they can then get things that there's a whole bunch of people that wouldn't otherwise have to listen to it. And now if LeBron James says it, now they do, right? But LeBron James is also a lightning rod sort of figure. Who knows what happens after he gets out there and he does it, right? So I don't think there's any clear, easy answers about where either of those dudes stand in this.
It's just interesting how we see athletes talking about, you know, these social issues, at least in this day and age, because, you know, I don't know if there is a comparison to, like, a lot of people like to compare, you know, LeBron to, like, he's having his Muhammad Ali moment, or he's having his Bill Russell moment, or he's having all these moments. And I'm just like, well, them dudes really had something to lose. Like, they wasn't.
Facts. Guys like Muhammad Ali actually lost a lot financially and was on the verge of bankruptcy. That comparison to him and LeBron James, it's not even close. LeBron making a statement today, he's going to get the sort of backing from mainstream media as well as Nike. But when Muhammad Ali had did it, especially talking about joining a separatist movement, that shit did not go well. They stripped him of his world championship. And financially, it hurt him for a long time. You see, he's part of that group of athletes that are on the Mount Rushmore of all time. Guys like Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan, and it kind of raised a little suspicious eye in 2006 when a New York firm for about $50 million purchased 80% of his name and image. And that same company just a few years prior purchased Elvis Presley's name and image for about $100 million. It makes you wonder what was the estate's financial situation. But after the sale of something like this, we started to see Muhammad Ali's image put in murky waters, as Colin Kaepernick, as well as guys like LeBron James, have been rumored to make the same sacrifices as Muhammad Ali. But in reality, once they made certain stances through the media, they were not only backed and applauded, but guys like Kaepernick were able to secure a lucrative long-term deal with Nike.
There's a flowery like way we pit them doing that, like, and it feels like we're getting, you know, with a lot of when I talk about the commodification of protest, I feel like these guys are like, I always see like these press releases in my email, like, well, he's doing this social justice angle as well, right? Like, it seems like it's been that way. How do we get to like the grassroots of it all in a more organic way than I feel like we actually are doing it?
Well, I think it's silly to expect rich people to do grassroots things. Like if you want to speak to a major difference between this LeBron and LeBron of however many years ago is he's a lot richer now. Like the things that he's thinking about are perhaps just a little bit different because his station in life is different. The people who typically do the grassroots stuff, one, tend to be young, right? Like when you look at the people that really kick the doors in and everything else, that's the behavior of people in their 20s. Old heads supposed to be out here just kind of like giving you game. Like what LeBron James and cats like him at this point in their lives are supposed to be doing to help movements like these is giving people money. That is what they do. That's not the guy that's going to be marching in the streets. That's not going to be the guy that's setting things on fire. No. He's 40 years old. He's out of that window. You give people some bread to help them make some moves.
And once again, that's something that Michael Jordan never gets credit for. Him and Oprah Winfrey were the ones to give Spike Lee financial backing to make that Malcolm X movie, especially after the big studios did not want to financially back Spike Lee. It was those type of silent approaches that Michael Jordan had back in the day. But now we see the media, especially around LeBron James, tend to brand build him by saying, look, he puts himself out there for certain social causes while Michael Jordan didn't do anything. But in reality, it wouldn't shock me if Michael Jordan financially spent way more money on major social issues more than LeBron James.
That would be a perfectly appropriate thing for a man like him to do, but very few people approach these things the same way that they did, call it 10 or 15 years ago, no matter who they are.
It's funny though, because LeBron, I think he legitimately wants to be that face. Like when he hears the Muhammad Ali comparisons, I'm sure he's really, really excited.
Oh, cool. I mean,
him and his Nike agents, they're excited for the brand building and for the optics. But for the backlash and responsibility, they really don't want any parts of it. Again, keep in mind, LeBron is supposed to be a universal figure for Nike, the same way Michael Jordan was for the NBA back in the 90s. And there's nothing wrong with that, because without them doing so, the players would not be able to make all the money that they do today, especially with endorsements.
It's funny though, because LeBron, I think he legitimately wants to be that face. Like when he hears the Muhammad Ali comparisons, I'm sure he's really, really excited.
Oh, cool. I mean,
right? I know he wants it.
Yeah, I mean, it would serve the ego of anybody if you felt like the world was really saying that you're Muhammad Ali. Now, what Muhammad Ali was doing at that time was just so much more of a revolutionary thing that like a public alignment with the Nation of Islam is something that LeBron James, no analog of that would he ever do.
No.
Period. And I say that with no judgment. That's not something he would ever do. The dynamics of a war and an actual defiance of the federal government, right? Like, it's hard to have a true comparison to that, right?
Right there, Bomani Jones is being honest and very truthful. You see the stark differences between the two? Muhammad Ali took much harsher stances that result in crazy financial penalties for him and his family. Major fucking difference.
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, with the defiance of the federal government like that, the closest Ali comp quietly is Bill Walton, who had to stave off the FBI being all up in his shit over who his friends were and those sorts of things. But with LeBron...
And also, I have to shoot an assist to Kareem. Kareem also took certain stances, especially in his day where the media was majority white male.
It's okay that he wasn't Muhammad Ali, but he was not Muhammad Ali. That is a very superficial understanding of what Muhammad Ali meant in his time.
What did you think of the LeBron, Kareem, and I say this in air quotes, beef, right? Because I think that's a really good, look into generational ways of looking at the way the world is, right? Like, say what you want about Kareem, he's still in the streets. These substacks are still coming. He is still talking that stuff that he was talking back in the day, right? But like, what did you think about those two kind of clashing, even if it was for a few weeks, right? Like, what?
Now, those two are always going to clash if you understand who Kareem really is. He's almost like a 10 times smarter, intellectual version of Kyrie. And guys like LeBron James, a lot of his tactics and manipulation, it doesn't work on a guy like Kareem. And at the end of the day, a lot of the previous GOATs, guys like MJ, Magic, Kareem, Akeem Olajuwon, among that 1%ers of NBA Mount Rushmore players, behind closed doors, they understand a lot of the tactics that LeBron has applied through the media. They may not agree with it, but they do understand it. And also, when it comes to the game of basketball itself on the court, they are not fooled by a lot of the stat padding and the non-utilization of teammates that LeBron has applied, especially in the finals going up against the Warriors in 2017 and 2018. It's been too many instances of this man looking for the perfect situation and bailing out on teammates.
Think of those two and those two entities colliding.
Don't everybody like each other? And the world is not short on people who don't like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm not saying it should or should not be that way. Like, Kareem dialed it up at the end when it was time and LeBron passed. I mean, he put on the good face or whatever. But that, I think, in both directions, one is not the other's kind of dude. I don't think that's necessarily generational. You know, like, I think Kareem is his own kind of dude. LeBron is his own kind of dude. And they are coming from different spaces and times.
Yeah. And I guess, and then go back to the league's point, right, where we talk about, 2020 and the league's response to it. Do you think that the NBA has lived up to what I guess the internet would call itself, or call it as like this woke left-leaning progressive league? Because I think there's a lot of holes in that, right? Like, I think there's a lot of, they were the first ones to kind of, they put the branding on, but they also were the first ones to take it off and be like, hey, we're going to kind of sit down the middle.
Yeah, but I mean, so for me, to be fair, like, I thought that was a very smart thing for them to do, was to take that stuff off, because it.
And also at the same time, that was the beginning of the media beginning to weaponize the NFL, as they are the only fraction of the whole entertainment industry that kind of leans more conservative. The media as a whole thought that they could come together and shame the NFL to change sort of their ideologies. And the NBA didn't necessarily ride that wave, but they did ride the wave of being the opposite of the NFL. That's when you start to hear quotes throughout the media saying the NBA is more progressive and it's the league of the future. So the NBA definitely did ride that wave of branding.
I'm distracted. Like, once people are thinking more about what's on the court than they are what's happening on the court, you got a bit of a problem. And that was a fair concern for them to have. They went a little over the top in their response. And that was because the players had them over a barrel. You were holding them hostage in Orlando and making them play basketball. And now they're really mad and they say they ain't going out there. They had all the cards.
You better put the koofies on and take that knee.
Yeah, you got to do whatever it takes to get them dudes out there on the basketball court, right? So, I mean, they had them in that time, but there's never been a time where it would be appropriate or actually true, this characterization of the left, the league as being like anything approaching being far left. There's too many billions of dollars for that thing to ever be far left. Those owners aren't terribly different than the NFL's owners. The only difference is the nature of a basketball roster gives the players, especially the really good players, more power than any players will ever have in football. And as a result, they can flex on the NBA a little bit about certain things and make things happen. Like the NBA, the culture of football is not black. The culture of basketball is. Like, you can't change that around. The tolerance of the fact that the culture of basketball is black leads people to see it as being this far left league. And I do think that there are some, what many would call progressive sensibilities that the league has publicly adopted, but I don't.
Yes, that is 100% facts. Yo, Bomani is killing it right here. The league, in a way, understands that the marketing around it, especially when it's perceived in American culture that a lot of African American culture kind of sets the trends on what's popular, what's hip, and they kind of do ride that wave. But it's up until a certain point. And we've seen that breaking point actually hit during the bubble, as they mentioned before, when the players were willing to walk out because the NBA was really trying to fulfill their TV contracts because I believe they had to play 70 games or more to get all the money. So after the George Floyd incident, the players were risking it to walk out. They made a phone call to Obama. He showed up, tried to get the players in line. Same thing for Michael Jordan. And it looks like the compromise to all that is them having the Black Lives Matter painted on the courts during the games. Once again, in that scenario, it proves that money is over all. They needed the players to be out there, and the league was willing to go probably against its core principles by taking a stance on either side of that issue with the police or the way blacks were being treated. And make no mistake about it, collecting that TV money at the time was really important, because the following season, the NBA had borrowed over $800 million just to stay afloat, while a lot of the teams could not have fans in the arenas.
I think that those progressive sensibilities that the league has adopted are any different than the sensibilities of any major corporation of its time, right? It's the same stuff. The NFL in its actual offices probably has a lot of the same stuff that they would say or they would employ. It's just that the football is not culturally black and basketball is.
Well, is that why there's such a difference in perception between the both leagues, right? Because like NFL still has end racism on their end zones, right?
Yeah.
And why is there such a difference in perception when one league doesn't have the insignia and one does?
Yeah, it's a false sense of perception, because if you look at both leagues, all the coaches, executives, and owners all look the same, and the players, for the most part, all look the same. It's really about the branding. But at the end of the day, what flows through all that is green. Both these leagues care about the green, and the NBA in the past few years have shown how money hungry they really are. First of all, their new TV deal is fracturing their audience through multiple streaming services. So it's going to be very inconvenient for fans to find games. And also, the money grab with the jerseys is insane. A different color, different scheme every single season. It's hard to even notice which team is which on the court when you're watching these games. And you can even look at the money grab by grabbing ads on the jerseys themselves. It works for international soccer because it's always been like that. But for the NBA, it's a little different. But who knows? It could be different for a younger generation.
Why is there such a difference in perception when one league doesn't have the insignia and one does?
There's a difference between the court saying Black Lives Matter and the field saying it takes all of us.
And racism too.
Yeah, but those are. I mean, they're very anodyne statements, right? They're benign. They're not shaking the table. Okay. The NBA put Black Lives Matter on the floor because what you have to remember is there was a brief glimmer during the summer of 2020 where the phrase Black Lives Matter was polling positively over 50%.
Yeah.
So they was riding a wave. The problem was that wave did not last as long as the bubble did. Mm-hmm. And after, if they had just done it for a couple of days, right? A couple of games and then taking it down, it probably would have gone over better, but they couldn't do that. People was mad, right? That wasn't going to be enough. And there was a brief moment in time where people thought that everything had changed. Yeah. LOL.
Where do you fall on the line of people saying that wokeness has killed the NBA ratings? I think personally it's stupid, but why does that even? Why has that been able to grow so many legs with this particular league?
I mean, because it always is. The people who dislike the NBA are always looking for an excuse.
That is facts. The people who tend to say that, they never liked the NBA to begin with. There's something that irks them the same way Dan Gilbert was kind of irked when LeBron James went to South Beach. It's something about some of these players just having the freedom of making all this money and having the ability to control their careers. You see, LeBron James, that's his real GOATness right there. He changed that paradigm between a star NBA player and the franchise. That relationship used to be the star was beholden and supposed to be loyal to the franchise until they didn't need him no more. And it was sometimes sad in the fan base to see that they traded their player away. But eventually that same fan base would forget that star over time. But LeBron James now, with that shift of leaving Cleveland to go to Miami, he changed the dynamics completely. Now it's normal for stars to leave franchises and take control of their careers. The only thing these players should be loyal to is themselves and their families.
Oh, like it's going to be something. You can only pay so much credence to when people try to ascribe those sorts of things. Because I mean, look around that league, man. That don't who are these people that we're talking about now? Like, start naming them. It's hard to come up with somebody that truly fits the description in a public way that would be offending these people who in the theory that you offer do that. Nah, to me, the problem with the NBA's ratings is it's twofold. Well, maybe three. One, America is becoming to football as Canada is to hockey, where every bit of news and every bit of coverage, like, we're becoming a one sport country with a lot of like other smaller sports that people enjoy. But like this idea of a big three, because we don't even say big four, hockey is not considered to be big in that way. But the idea of a big three, no. This is going to be the big three like when LeBron was in Miami. Like, keep it real, big dog. It was LeBron, and then it was the other two. Mm-hmm. Like, that is a big thing I think that's happening with the NBA.
Also with the NBA, because of the advent of social media, it's harder to make brand new stars. I don't know if it's just the generations of players coming in. We just need that one excellent draft class to kind of change the paradigm of the league, which ended up happening to the WNBA. They had that one generational draft with Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. These girls, as I like to call them, the NIL girls, they've completely changed just the overall pizzazz of the WNBA. They brought a new flair to it. But the NBA right now is sort of missing that. The impactful draft class where guys are not afraid to show personality, and also they need that star player that the media just sort of gravitates to, and it makes it easier for them to promote the league. Right now, Adam Silver, as well as the NBA's competition committee, has opened the game up and just the spacing on the floor so much that it's allowed internationals to come in and actually not necessarily dominate, but actually show their kind of style of play, allow that to shine through. And the league right now needing more international players and making the game more appealing globally, it works in their benefit because now they have a larger pool of audience members to reach from, and also it works in streaming. But at the same time, that's a double-edged sword because the American media, when it comes to the NBA, only knows how to market the league with an American quote-unquote born star that has the swag. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. There's a certain flair that the American media only understands to market the game in that manner. Outside of that Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, outside of that Black American infraction, which Bomani Jones alluded to early on, the NBA, as well as the American people, have actually adopted to the Black American style of basketball and all the culture around it. And this is definitely true for the NBA media and the way they understand how to market the game the best. It's always around that figurehead. We see NBA international superstars like Giannis actually mention this. He cannot be the face of the league because he doesn't have the quote-unquote American swag. And that right there is the elephant in the room from the NBA media. They are struggling to market the game outside of that player's archetype.
I think number two, people's consumption patterns on a lot of things got thrown off by the pandemic, and they wound up off the calendar and all kinds of stuff, happening there. And I think that in the margins, if nothing else, had an effect on people. People just didn't quite jump back to the habit when it came to basketball.
I also think a younger generation has come up with the NBA through Twitter, and their consumption patterns are very different. They're more highlight driven. They're not necessarily going to follow certain teams as they go through certain rebuilds. They just don't have the attention span for that. They're going to follow certain players, and mainly they're catching the games through clips and highlights until it's playoff time. So that type of consumption has changed a lot. We've seen the advent of TikTok and Instagram Reels, especially during the pandemic times.
And number three, to me, is I think that this is a rejection of the current style of basketball that is being played. And there are tweaks that they need to make in the rules to encourage a different style of play, because what you have now is just incentivize people to stand behind the three-point line and shoot way more three-pointers than I personally would like to watch.
And the style of play is definitely an issue. The influx of the analytical crowd, the guys out of MIT like Daryl Morey, the Sam Hanke that was out in Philadelphia, these non-basketball guys sort of came into the NBA and brought an Oakland A's type Moneyball feel to the NBA. And make no mistake about it, being a president of basketball operations is a highly paid job. And these guys sort of converted these positions into an analytics job. And during that conversion, that James Harden 2015-16 being in the Houston Rockets those years, 2017 and so forth, that was sort of the test run of that style of basketball. And on television, for a lot of fan bases outside of the Houston Rockets, that was not pretty to watch at all. And during that same era, between 2015 to about, I would say, 2019, we seen a lot of teams try to imitate what the Golden State Warriors were doing. And it resulted in some of the biggest blowouts we've ever seen just by halftime. If certain teams didn't have guys who could make three-point shots on the floor, they were getting blown out before the third quarter even started. Again, things like that do not translate well on the television screen. But as Brian Windhorst once stated, Daryl Morey told him that it was not his business to market the NBA game. This is after Windhorst had told him the analytics ball was not translating well on television. And also, something that doesn't get talked about too much during this era, there were a lot of guys in the NBA media that sort of got into the analytics that were offered front office NBA jobs. That's how much in this era there were guys getting highly 6-figure to 7-figure jobs while not necessarily being basketball people. I believe Zach Lowe was even offered a front office job from ESPN by an NBA team. There were definitely multiple NBA teams that wanted to hire certain NBA media members that had a better understanding of the analytics. But hey, the NBA audience has spoken. The league can see through their ratings that this stuff is not translating at all.
Maybe not everybody's like me, but I believe that the league needs to do something about this, because I don't find this to be a delightful brand of basketball.
And it's not just them shooting threes every possession. It's your best teams doing it. It's your marquee team doing it. The Boston Celtics do it all the time. Like 23 seconds left of the shot clock, I'm going to chuck this three. And it's the teams that are on TV the most that are, right? So even when the casual fan sees it, it's like, I don't want to see that. I want to go back to the first point that you made when you were talking about the NFL and football in general, because I want to put college football in that as well, becoming the nation's sport right now, right? And the NBA's MO throughout at least my entire life was, we are the most global sport out there. Everybody got a basketball court. There's one in China, there's one in Rio, there's one. If that was the case, how did they fumble that bag? Is it style of play? Is it wokeness? Like what is that? Because that's what they always prided themselves on as a league.
Yeah, and I don't know what the numbers look like around the globe. Like maybe they're staying high there. I don't have a great answer for that. I just know the American, the American appetite for the game I can speak to. I don't really know what's going on around the world, but it is, just generally speaking, there aren't that many games that people play everywhere. And really it's basketball and footy, soccer. Those are the two games that people play literally everywhere. In America.
Now, those two sports do have a parallel in which their professional leagues are trying to market their game. You see, in soccer, the audience, regardless of anywhere around the world, no matter what country, the audience is used to a star being from another country. Unlike the NBA, the audiences from around the world is pretty much tied the NBA star sort of into American pop culture. Once again, that's why I stated before, quote unquote, the NBA star is marketed in a way with a certain kind of swagger. It's almost like the Michael Jordan blueprint of the way the NBA has been marketed in the last 30 years is so strong that a lot of the audience just can't get out of. We seen Kobe kind of emulated. We see LeBron James kind of emulated in a way. There's a certain way that the league has been marketed, I would say, since the 1980s, since Magic Johnson came into the NBA. It's been marketed a certain way, and the figurehead has a certain look, particularly it's an American person, whether it's a white guy in Larry Bird or it's Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. It's, for the most part, been around an African-American male, or it could be a typical white guy like Larry Bird, but it's always around the quote-unquote American swag. It's just a certain American flair to the game, and that's around the world. But in soccer, it's the exact opposite. We've seen Cristiano Ronaldo from Portugal. We've seen Messi. We've seen many soccer stars from Brazil, from France. It's all around the world, from Russia. The marketing around it is completely different. And this is where the NBA kind of falls flat on it.
Really love sports that we really just kind of just play in America. Really into those.
But it's crazy though, because the NFL, what I kind of like respect about the NFL right now is they're just on some gangster shit. They're just like, yeah, we're gonna play on Christmas Day. So what? We're also going to go to Berlin. We're also going to go to Brazil and play a regular season game, right? Like there just seems that audacity there when it seems like the NBA is a little fidgety right now in terms of growth, right? Like I feel like they're letting these narratives kind of like consume them as a league, right? Adam Silver's over here answering questions about ratings all the time, right? Like I don't know where we are right now, but I just know the NFL is just on some gangster shit and the NBA seems to not be.
Yeah, the NBA, after securing a $76 billion TV deal, they're sort of on the defense. It could also be, and something that never really gets talked about, it seems like the coverage around the NBA, the independent media sphere, I believe that segment of the NBA media is growing a lot more than we think. And the audiences have been gravitating to that a lot more, especially when you see personalities like Shannon Sharp tend to hang on guys like LeBron James. Same thing for Nick Wright. A lot of the polarization of the sports coverages in the mainstream channels, these guys are too politicized. They're not going to want to talk bad about a certain player. They're going to defend them to the end. And that type of back and forth, it reminds everyone of politics. And we don't want to see that type of coverage in sports. So the independent creators are kind of making it more well known of some of the NBA struggles with their three-point shooting and some of the ratings issues. I believe that noise is getting a lot louder, and Adam Silver, he's definitely gone in the press run to defend it. And all this is happening after the league has secured $76 billion in brand new revenue. This is unreal. We've never seen it like this before.
But I'll tell you this, if they get a true superstar player, like if Victor Wembanyama, for example, becomes that sort of force, now we're talking about something different. Like what is often the seismic change, but what is often the seismic change for basketball is the emergence of that guy. And you're saying, yes, he is. He's 20 years old. He just got here. Like people are still getting to know that guy. It doesn't have to happen immediately. But like what happens when if you get a deep playoff run from him in the next call it couple of years, and that begins to start highlighting stars that are around. Like basically the NBA needs its Caitlin Clark, and cyclically there have been those players.
Exactly. It definitely needs its new Jordan. You notice the two names that they just mentioned, Caitlin Clark and Jordan, they're both American. And when the American audience views something as popular, the world tends to follow. See, that's the one thing that gets overlooked here. The American audience sets the trends. But all the upcoming names in the NBA, guys like Luka, Giannis, Wemby, a lot of the figureheads are international players. And the American audience is just not used to cheering or just uplifting guys like that to be the figureheads of their leagues. And unlike international soccer, this is going to be a primary issue for the NBA. The audiences are just conditioned a lot different. And Americans, they like to see another American as the figurehead of their league. They don't care how talented an international star is. But in soccer, It's just a complete opposite.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the same person though, right?
Yeah.
Like cyclically, you've had this. You had the emergence of Dr. J. You had the emergence of Jordan. Shaq, in a lot of ways, became that player. Like the next one that really just kind of became the center of our attention universe.
Which it shouldn't have been Shaq. It should have been Akeem Olajuwon. See the same sequence he's talking about, that same order: Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. It should have been Akeem Olajuwon right there after that, when Jordan had retired. But the NBA media, once again, they do not know how to promote the international star. There's always been an issue with that.
In basketball, we had LeBron James. We added some other. Now it hasn't quite been one like LeBron, but Steph Curry, much to our surprise, became that person. Right?
Yeah.
Who's going to be the next one?
It does feel like we're in a bit of the late 90s all over again, you know, like that lockout year going into the Lakers three-peat, right, where people were just trying to find stars. I mean, I love Ant. I know you love Ant. I do believe that Wemby is going to be that guy. It just feels like we're not promoting Wemby. It's as crazy as it may seem, as much as we could as a league. I don't know. It just seems like he's just mashing right now. And I don't know if that's market, but also he's like this. He's from Paris. He is a world name already. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe he does have to get to a point where they're going into playoffs each and every time, right?
I don't think it's that at all. It is not that at all. You can see when Anthony Edwards does his interviews, there's a flair that he has. He's showing hints of what the media, and especially the American audience, likes to see. The shit talking, the swagger, the cockiness, the flair. It's an American thing. We walk around with our nuts swinging. It is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know how much. I mean, market, I think the emergences of LeBron James and Kevin Durant from Cleveland and Oklahoma City indicates that the market size thing doesn't really hold. Like Russell Westbrook, they were still doing television numbers for the Thunder after Durant left in that first year, right? So like, I don't know how much the market part helps. I do think a lot of the coverage is kind of based on the way that these algorithms work, generally giving you more of what we know you already like.
Yeah.
And they know that you like LeBron James. They know that you like Steph Curry. And so they keep giving you back what you like. I don't know exactly how anything breaks through, though, whether that be in music or anything else. Like, I don't know how these things break through. But the NBA needs their breakthrough. Like, Caitlin Clark broke through.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, she broke through. So who's going to be the next NBA player to really break through? Like, I really like Anthony Edwards. He's my guy. But he may be the level of star that is truly he's a lot of people's favorite player. But that doesn't mean you're going to be Michael Jordan. Like, the thing that happened in the late 90s.
You think?
No, he is not there because that was so singular. Like, that was a natural born star, right? Like, you didn't have to do nothing to make the star out of Allen Iverson. Like, it was right there as he was. That was what made that so fascinating, so special. In a lot of ways.
That is facts. I always say, man, Allen Iverson is the first rock star of the NBA. He's sort of like the Mick Jagger of the NBA. It's just whatever he wears, whatever he does, he's just setting trends and he does it effortlessly.
Anthony Edwards, he is not there because that was so singular. Like, that was a natural born star, right? Like, you didn't have to do nothing to make the star out of Allen Iverson. Like, it was right there as he was. That was what made that so fascinating, so special. In a lot of ways, Anthony Edwards has that. But he doesn't quite have, he has like a silly defiant streak, the one that cusses in interviews and stuff like that. Iverson wasn't doing that childish stuff. He was terrifying people in a whole different sort of way. Anthony Edwards, we just kind of chuckle at, you know? But in the late 90s, the mistake with the late 90s was it wasn't simply that everybody was looking for the next Jordan, is that a big part of what they ascribed to being the next Jordan was being inoffensive. And what they misunderstood about being Jordan and why you couldn't find anybody that fit that archetype so particularly is that he was inoffensive, but he wasn't like benign, right? Like Grant Hill didn't really make you feel anything. He seemed like a very nice man, but he didn't really make you feel anything. Jordan was cool as hell. Jordan had edge. Jordan had like a street quality to him. Jordan had all of those things. He just didn't say nothing stupid.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a matter of like, oh, you know, we just need somebody that's also clean cut. No, that was a secondary thing of it with Jordan. The primary part was that he was cool than a motherfucker. And Edwards could be that, maybe, right? Who's going to be the one to cut through?
Yeah, and even with the Wemby stuff, right? Like I see, like even if he is a big star, right? Is he going to be a big star like that in America, right? Because
no, right away I could tell you already, no, he is not going to be. And if you look at Michael Jordan, he had the hoop earring. He had the full American swag. Even though he's not even into hip hop, he still had the quote unquote American swag, the cockiness. There's just a certain aura that Americans have that even internationals know it. They know we like to walk around with our dicks swinging. Pause. But look at Trump. That's pretty much most of his appeal, is the defiance. Like Allen Iverson had a lot of that organically. The way he dressed, the way he talked, the way he had his tattoos. The next star doesn't have to have those things, but it's a certain aura. And a lot of the international players, they're not going to have it because it's not organic from where they're from. Wemby is on the Spurs. The Spurs, for the most part, have always had players that have been compliant. That's why they've always been attracted to international stars. And us Americans, we are some uncompliant motherfuckers.
he could go the Giannis way, where Giannis is a huge star, I think, all over the world. But I don't think is he the biggest star in the NBA right now, you think? Like, I don't think so. I think
the biggest star in the NBA is LeBron James.
Or LeBron,
like, yeah. Biggest star in the NBA is LeBron James. But I think what would be interesting about Victor is that Victor will be fascinating to children. Like, it's one thing when you have the big man like Shaq, and that gives you Goliath. Like, Will Chamberlain gave you Goliath, and those people, I mean, Shaq became a giant star, but there's a different quality to that. There's something about the super tall, skinny dude like him that can contort his body in all those ways. And like, they call him an alien. Kids love that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, He is ready made for a young generation that could come up and then him be their GOAT.
Ja Morant was more of that for the younger generation. The way he does all his dances, that guy was made for social media. Just charismatic. He just pops out on social media. It's undeniable. And you can see it in the games when you see the little kids' reaction out of seeing him. Kids don't react like that to other players. Ja Morant was really that for the youngest NBA audiences. I would say around like ages 6, 7, 8, all the way up until I would say 17. He was that guy for them. And that is a demographic the NBA right now, they're struggling to get with all the options they have with the video games and just the online social media platforms. The league is going to need players that pop out of the framework like Ja Morant.
Like, it's funny because like he has like Kareem. He's like, his body type is like Kareem. I remember seeing him in Summer League. He has a lot more charisma than Kareem did. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like I don't know. And also, like, what do you think that says about the evolution of the big man and where we're going with it if he's the one? What do you think? Because he's Durant, he's Kareem, he's all these different types of big men.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything to do with anything else that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Like, there's one of one. The closest, when you go look at what Ralph Sampson could have been, maybe that's what we're talking about. A 7'4", face the basket, handle the ball, power forward. That's the closest example that we've had. But like, what does this say about the evolution of the big man? This is so far off the charts and like such an outlier. I don't know what to say this says about anything. We're in the NBA era now where anybody can win it any given year. I don't like that quality, but that's where we are.
And that's a good thing to have going into this era of streaming, especially with this new generation of NBA fans. They do not have the attention span to sit through as their teams go through all these rebuilds and just going through all these lotteries, and then the lottery ends up being a bust. They're going through it again. They do not have that attention span. The NBA has to adopt the NFL model where a team could be last place one year, then they go through the draft and they're contending and in the playoffs or even in the play-in the following season. That's how you're going to keep a lot of these younger fan bases engaged. And that's where the NBA bread and butter is. Their real value is them having a younger demographic, a younger audience. As valuable as the NFL is, a lot of these streaming companies are attracted to the NBA because they understand that their demographics tend to be way younger than what the NFL has. And advertisers are really attracted to that audience.
Yeah, I just don't. Also, like to add on that point, I don't know what was wrong with dynasties in the NBA. I think like the NBA was built on dynasties.
What was wrong with a dynasty is that if you own a team, you want a champion too. And instead of making them go out there and earn it, they just decided to figure out ways to make it less random. Like a follower of mine said many years ago, they are eliminating the comparative advantage of competence.
And that's a beautiful thing. I know it sounds crazy, but we see it all the time in the NFL. You see big time wide receivers like the one in Kansas City that left Patrick Mahomes. He went on to another team. It's always been like that in that league, and they continue to prosper. And the NBA definitely needs to adapt that kind of mindset because, once again, the younger fan bases, they do not have the patience to sit through no fucking rebuild. The days of certain franchises just falling off the mountaintop and then spending 8 years rebuilding, it's over. It's just not going to turn out well with the new generation coming up, and it's really not going to translate on streaming. These games are going to be a lot harder to find, and if the teams are not interesting, fan bases are not going to be clicking through 100 different apps, subscribing to all of them to find the games. So a lot of these teams are going to have to be compelling, and they're going to have to compete. We see the Minnesota Timberwolves having to let go of Karl Anthony Towns because of cap reasons, and that's going to become the new norm. You're going to see teams make the Western Conference Finals or the Eastern Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals and having to actually get rid of certain players because they're going to have a stranglehold due to cap restrictions. So it is what it is. The NBA going into the parity era makes sense for the NBA viewership and their habits, and also for the streaming companies to maintain subscriptions. So that's all I have for today. You fellas definitely hit up the description below. Hit up the mailbag with any questions you have. We got some game film also in that description. There's a lot of great breakdowns on there. And until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.